opinion is Junkyard Dog was the most prominent black wrestler to ever lace a pair of boots.
Overcoming incredible odds, a young black wrestler rose from humble beginnings to become a generational superstar, achieving unimaginable heights in a sport dominated by white performers.
Yes, he did. He paved the way for all of us.
You feel you're going to be wearing the crown?
Just as sure as I'm black in the day, son, I mean, Jane.
His charisma and, his personality is what got him to where he was, because he was a fan favorite no matter how you looked at it.
JYD was on top, selling it out. I mean, it was incredible. If you guys could just hear the crowd, they just love it, and couldn't nobody stop it.
He's invincible.
It ain't nothing else I like to do no better, and that's fighting.
I seen the stars for him, because at that time there were no black superstars. Bill Watts, he saw dollars.
I saw his charisma, I named him, gave him his music, and did everything, and he was so dynamite.
The unlikely friendship between promoter Cowboy Bill Watts and the Junkyard Dog was tested when the Dog defects to the WWF.
I think Dog went because there was a better opportunity. There's more money, and then he was going to be a big star there.
But JYD's dreams of achieving superstar status in the big leagues fell short.
Vince McMahon didn't use him like Bill did. I wish he had, because he could have been one of the biggest stars in the WWE.
Yeah, it broke his spirit, because he went there to be that big hero again, and he didn't get it.
How can Vince McMahon put everything on JYD? Because you don't know if he's going to show up or not. You're not dependable, untrustworthy.
Dog forgot one thing. You can't do what the white man do and keep your job.
When you trying to become a star and on your way to stardom, you can fail at a lot of things, but to be successful as a wrestler, you have to put the time in. You have to become known by the fans. You have to be able to sell your product. You have to be able to have some dialogue. When Junkyard Dog came to Mid-South, he had dialogue, he had style, he had physical attributes. And these things turn into box office. These things turn into money. Sylvester Ritter was probably the greatest star to come through the state of Louisiana as they ever had in terms of wrestling.
He represents the people. They all love him.
Dog had a great following. He was universally loved. That gleam in his eye, his little smile that he had was infectious.
Man, he just got over. The people in Louisiana loved him.
And, he'd get to the ring, and he'd grab that top rope and lean back and shake his legs and his butt, and the people would just go wild.
I'm lacing up the boots, and the whole building's going, "Who that? Who that? Who that gonna beat the dog? Who that? Boom, boom, boom. Who that?" I'm lacing up my boots going, "Holy smokes."
More than just a wrestler, Junkyard Dog is a hero to the working class, a beloved figure in the city of New Orleans who became a superstar to fans across the Southeast, transcending the sport to become an icon.
A Junkyard Dog, brother. Nobody messes with a damn Junkyard Dog. I'm Jake the Snake Roberts, Hall of Famer, and I can still kick your butt.
Mid-South, I am tired of you ripping me off and playing your stinking game with me.
New Orleans was his town, man. And my God, if you were wrestling in, brother, you were scared to death. Because you didn't know if you were going to make it out of that ring and back to the dressing room. Police usually had to carry the guys out that wrestled Dog. Because if you parked your car in that parking lot, they would destroy it. Who that gonna beat that dog? Nobody, that's who.
Before becoming one of the most popular wrestlers the South had ever seen, the Junkyard Dog was a rookie named Big Daddy Ritter, searching for his big break in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Well, Dog tried to get into wrestling several times, but they're all short-term deals. He wasn't on everybody's most wanted list because then, he was black. And a lot of the white promoters, and they're all white, had a quota, seemingly unwritten, unstated, but it was there. And so if he didn't fit their quota, they already had a black baby face. I ain't gonna hire another one. It's sad to say, it's coarse, it's hurtful. I am Jim Ross, been in wrestling since 1974, and along the way I got to meet the Junkyard Dog and become friends.
It's great to have you back, Junkyard Dog.
JYD, when I first met him, it seemed like he was always smiling. And his skill set was limited, but my God, the charisma and the love that he created with the fan base. But you can't coach, charisma. Or you either got it or you don't.
Despite Ritter's charisma and size, only Bill Watts, the owner and promoter of Mid-South Wrestling, decides to take a chance on the young brawler.
Cowboy was bigger than life. He was a disciplinarian. He was kind of like the head coach. You know, I never met Vince Lombardi, the famed football coach of the Packers that won multiple Super Bowls, but some of my older peers said that Watts was Vince Lombardi-like. My way or the highway. Here are the rules. There are not many of them. I expect you to adhere to them, and there's no negotiation.
Bill Watts gave him the biggest break for a black man. Let me turn this off. Hey, this is the Birdman Coco Beware. Man, you know me flying all over the place in the wrestling business.
The Birdman Coco Beware.
I mean, wrestling is a white man's sport. JYD, he wasn't a wrestler at all. He couldn't put you in a leg lock or a chicken wing. He don't know nothing about all that. He was a street fighter. Bill Watts gave him a chance to draw some money. And you know what? He bust Louisiana wide open.
Mid-South Sports was based on realism. So athleticism, realism, making it more easy to suspend your disbelief of the art form that is pro wrestling. Watts had a rule: if you go to a bar or you get in any kind of scuffle and you get your ass whipped, you're fired. The booker for Cowboy Bill Watts is Ernie Ladd. Ernie Ladd was a philosopher. He was 6'9" and 300 pounds. So Ernie was always looking for talent. Somebody along the way told Ernie, hey, there's this black guy, big, muscular powerhouse, kind of guy you'd like, Ernie, that you ought to take a look at. So Ernie brought Dog in, and he had a rough start because Cowboy didn't know that Dog was not a great technical wrestler.
He brought that big, fine, black specimen of a body down that aisle. Some young gals started screaming and hollering, and we would excite the crowd.
He was so statuesque, and he looked great. Turn your head, you wouldn't forget him.
Dog just clicked with the wrestling fan, so he knew how to connect with the audience. This is Mr. USA, WWE Hall of Famer, Tony Atlas.
So all you boys in the Mid-South, get ready for yourself, because I got trouble here, and I got trouble there, and I got trouble coming your way to the Mid-South. We gon' boogie, baby.
So I have to give credit for this to Cowboy Bill Watts. Bill Watts came up with ideas. Dog was a hell of a football player. He was a hell of a street fighter. He was a brawler. So what Bill Watts did was create matches that fit Dog style.
Bill wanted Dog to do a few things really well. Clotheslines, thumps, body slams, tackles. And so those things, based on his football background, those things could be translated very easily into pro wrestling.
Oh, power slam!
To boost Junkyard Dog's star power, Bill Watts and Ernie Ladd know they need to find the perfect villain for JYD to face in the ring.
Wait a minute! What's he doing?
There's nothing that he couldn't do in the ring, you know, if he was in the ring with the right guy. I am Ted DiBiase. Towards the end of my career, I was known in the WWE as the $1 Million Man.
Ted DiBiase! 1, 2, 3!
1, 2, 3. Alfred Neely raises a hand.
Something in that club.
And the thing that I did was I always highlighted in the ring what he did best. I mean, Bill Watts coached me, the Funks coached me. They would say, Teddy, you got to basically put him in the middle of the ring and work around him and emphasize or highlight the things that you know he does very well and stay away from the things that he doesn't do so well. He had enough trust in me to know that, you know, I wasn't going to make him look bad out there. I was always going to make him look good.
The Dog just thumped him, and there's the count.
Well, you talk about an action-packed duo, they are.
We became friends. We traveled together a lot, and so much so that when we got married, JYD was my best man. That's how close we were.
Put that chains around his neck, put that music on, another one bite the dust, and he came back in with a thump. The rest of it is history.
There he goes with that big thump. He just put him about 6 feet under.
Bill Watts is the first wrestling owner, promoter, who ever featured as one of his very top stars, a black guy.
This last year has kind of been the year of the dog. I don't know if it's the Chinese year of the dog or not, but in Mid-South Wrestling, it was the year of the dog.
Bill Watts took JYD and made him the star.
When you get a wall chances because you're doing so many good things.
They had a very, very close relationship. Anything that Dog needed or wanted or disliked, he would never talk to the wrestlers about it. He would only talk to Bill Watts.
I don't think anyone in the business did more for an individual than Bill Watts as he looked at mentoring and helping Dog. Bill looked at him like he was family.
You always go out and give 100% for the people and for yourself.
And a lot of people were astounded that Cowboy was so friendly with a black person. And Cowboy said, I want you to know one thing. He said, my favorite color is green. And at that time, JYD was selling tickets, lots of them.
Junkyard Dog's captivating presence draws capacity crowds night after night, inspiring his fans to stop at nothing to defend their hero.
The fans not only looked up to it, they worshiped him. I'm Jim Cornette. I've been involved in a variety of ways in professional wrestling over the last 40-something years.
Because that's all you are, is a yellow dog-faced liar.
You know what he just did? He just wrote a check that his rear end won't be able to...
The downtown municipal auditorium was the Dog's house every Monday night. And the Freebirds come in and they want to take over. The Freebirds had hair cream that could remove your hair. And they said they were going to use it to take the hair away from one of their opponents. But when Junkyard Dog came in and tried to do something about it, accidentally, according to the Freebirds, the cream wound up in his eyes.
Hey, this is supposed to be a solution to remove hair. The agony he's in.
And my God, that moment right there. Freebirds were dead men.
When the word got out that JYD had been blinded by the Freebirds, and then when JYD went on television and said, my daughter, my baby daughter is about to be born and I'll be able to hold her, but I'll never be able to see her. The people wanted to kill the Freebirds, literally.
As the highly anticipated dog collar match with JYD against Freebird Michael Hayes approaches, Dog plays his part at ringside until one fateful night when the line between fiction and reality really blurs.
JYD himself told me this story. Others have disputed it. But it sounds very typical of New Orleans and the wrestling scene at that time. They're in the downtown municipal auditorium. And Dog is sitting at ringside. He's blind, but he's in the corner. The Freebirds look around and they see Dog sitting in the corner. And all of a sudden, some guy comes over the railing and is right there at Dog's shoulder. And the guy pulls out the biggest gun he's ever seen and said, don't worry, Dog, I got him. And for 2 seconds, Dog is conflicted. Do I grab this guy's gun and save their lives, but expose that I can see? Or do I sit here and let him shoot him? And while he was conflicted, the cops came over the rail and grabbed the guy and took him down.
In our little world down there in the Mid-South, he became bigger than life. Sometimes you wonder when success comes somebody's way, is it truly a blessing or a curse?
JYD, he transcends race, color, and creed. He's everybody's champion.
Under the guidance of legendary promoter Bill Watts, the Junkyard Dog has emerged as a main event superstar in Mid-South, drawing record-breaking crowds for the company.
He was the black Hulk Hogan down there. Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas. I mean, he had all those towns just sold up.
Let me tell you something, Buzzer Wuzzer. It ain't but one dog.
Well, there wasn't many black wrestling stars when I broke into business. I'm WWE Hall of Famer Teddy Long.
You will go one-on-one with The Undertaker.
Dog was a big draw. He had that charisma, so he brought the blacks out, and also he brought the whites out. There were whites that loved JYD too. So Bill Watts knew that was money, okay? So that's why he pushed Dog.
Oh, the crowd saying, who that? Who that? Who that? Who that gonna beat that Junkyard Dog? Who that?
You know, in Mid-South, we stop at a restaurant, we stop at a gas station, people recognize us where we went.
We get a lot of letters at Mid-South asking that the Dog and the different stars can drop by and visit them. I know we got a nice letter from a kindergarten teacher in LeCompte. Well, the Junkyard Dog found time, and when word got out in that town, they had Junkyard Dog Day, and I'll tell you, it was great.
After he got his, he wanted to reach back and help others. He got more pleasure out of helping you talk to the kids, give them money. Very generous, not just with his money, but with his time.
You know, you get fame and stuff, get very well known, and they forget about the way that they grew up. And a lot of times I like to go back to school and visit.
Long before the bright lights and roaring crowds, Sylvester Ritter, the man behind the Junkyard Dog, grew up in a small North Carolina town.
What a lot of people don't understand or don't know about it is it's a true rags to riches story for him. My name's Jarvis Woodburn. I'm the nephew of the Junkyard Dog. I called him Uncle Dog. That's what he was to me. This is the old one, I believe. Yeah. He grew up without a dad. My great-grandmother, which is his grandmother's the one that raised him and my mom, true Southern upbringing, family first, treat all people equally, and that's just the kind of person that he was. This is the home where Sylvester grew up, him, my mom, my grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother. It was old school. Wake up in the middle of the night, gotta go to the bathroom, gotta do number one, you're going in the bucket. You gotta do number two, either you hold it, or you're coming outside and using the outhouse. There we go. There's the source of heat right there. And this was kind of like the living room area. This was a bedroom here, so it's very cramped. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, there was actually 2 beds in here. There's that wall with all of the photos and stuff. There's actually a real young picture of him over there. If these walls could talk.
But I grew up just like everybody else with nothing. I grew up hard, back down in South North Carolina, but I fought and I'm still fighting, trying to bail on myself.
I saw him one time to give fans, he took the dog chain off his neck and gave it to a kid with a family there. And they just loved it.
He still stayed humble. He wasn't a guy that you couldn't talk to. Dog never changed. He never changed.
Dog, life on the road and the days and weeks away from home begin to take their toll.
He would always try to come home around, especially the holidays when my mom cooks. But then after that, it's just kind of like just hanging out with the family for as long as they can before they got to get back on the road. He had a daughter, LaToya. His daughter was with us since she was 2 going on 3 years old. He loved her to death. She loved him. She was definitely a daddy's girl. He was a great father. He's just on the road all the time.
Being on the road all the time is, well, I mean, it can take a toll.
It taxes on your body, it taxes on your mind, it taxes mostly on your relationships with your children, with your wife, with your family.
You know, an average week was 1,500, 2,000 miles a week. So you're in a car a lot, and you're away from your family a lot. And sometimes a big old fat joint was your solace. Of course, for a dog, it just created more of an appetite.
We both were experimenting with drugs at the time. I remember JY showing me a jar that he had over 1,000 hits of speed in it, you know, and of course when he came south, it came with him. Yeah, he was already into the speed and into the downers and sleeping pills. I hadn't gotten into that yet, but I was soon to start.
There was a couple times on the road with him, he would always keep his pinky nailed a little bit longer. You know, I'll look over and see him, you know, and he was just about to do it, and he looked over at me and he goes, "If I ever see you doing this, I'll kill you." All right. Ain't gonna tell me twice. Kind of like rock and roll. I mean, I didn't know wrestlers had groupies. I found that out. It's kind of like you see on TV with these rock stars and stuff. It was just like anywhere they went. Restaurants, bars. When you got fame like this, you said, you can actually make money. I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I'm not going to sleep with them for free." I mean, some of these chicks would pay.
So I started hanging out with Dog because I got free beer, free food, and got laid. And they paid for it. We was in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I was low on money because at that time, unfortunately, I was involved with drugs. And Dog said, "I can get you some money." I said, "Okay." So I got some girls coming. I said, "Oh, thank you." The door opened and these 3 girls came in. And each one of them gave Dog $100 apiece to get laid by the wrestlers. So anyway, Dog said, he don't do no screwing. He like your feet. So he gonna play with your feet. You let him play with your feet. So I'm playing with the girl's feet. Dog getting ready to do the girl, and then we heard another knock at the door. He thought it was one of the wrestlers. It was the girl's husband. You know, he wanted to fight Dog, so he did. It didn't last long. Dog beat the hell out of him. The girl stayed.
Dog was one of the highest paid guys in pro wrestling at that time. He never made under $1,000 a week. I think he probably averaged more than like $2,000 or $3,000 a week. And in a territory that size, that was pretty extraordinary. Bill, he did nice things for him, including a car. And when he pulled up to an arena, you got noticed in a positive way.
As one of the biggest draws in the territory, the Junkyard Dog catches the eye of WWF promoter Vince McMahon. In the summer of 1984, McMahon makes JYD an offer that's more than double what he's paid under Bill Watts.
Vince McMahon was starting the national expansion that he started in 1984, and Vince was trying to suck up all the talent.
Unfortunately, the thing happened that I never believed would happen, and that was Dog walked out. He walked out on his professional savior, and he went to WWF for the cash.
How does Bill Watts feel when JYD leaves?
I'd love to have seen him when he got that phone call.
A lucrative offer from the WWF proves too strong for the Junkyard Dog to resist, as he suddenly departs Mid-South, sending shockwaves through the territory and leaving promoter Bill Watts stunned.
The big topic of conversation is the Junkyard Dog and what's happened to him, and we don't really know. We do know that he's left the Mid-South area.
When Dog left Mid-South, it broke Watts' heart, because he had never been as kind and as giving to anybody in his career. Bill went on television, had a little verbal tirade directed at Dog.
I wanted to comment 1 minute on the Junkyard Dog, because I watched him come to Mid-South as a youngster, and a lot of people watched him grow to become truly a superstar. But then JYD walked out, not only on Mid-South, which really hurt me personally because I considered him a great friend, he walked out on all the fans.
I mean, to see a white man cry over a black man back in the day, I saw tears come out of Bill Watts' eyes. That just hurt him bad because Bill Watts did everything he could to keep him there. And just looked like overnight, he was gone.
But in the aftermath of his departure, rumors circulate that his sudden exit from the company is motivated by factors beyond money.
Dog told me this story, the way he went to the WWF. Dog was in the bathroom, and he was in the stall. Bill Watts and Grizzly Smith, they came in the bathroom, and they didn't know Dog was in the stall. Grizzly Smith went to tell Bill Watts, he says, well, I think we're going to lose Sylvester. I hear he's going to the WWF. He's going to New York. The next thing Bill Watts said to Grizzly Smith said, oh, don't worry about it. That nigger ain't going nowhere. Dog heard that. And so that's when he made up his mind to leave and go to Vince.
After the Junkyard Dog leaves Mid-South in the summer of 1984, Bill Watts begins a search for his replacement.
Brother, it scared him to death that his territory was going to just collapse. So desperate that immediately he tried to slide in another black superstar.
Bill made I think, a mistake in the sense that we started trying out every African-American wrestler that we could bring in. George Wells.
You can't run this dog out. I'm here to stay, and I'm here to whip a whole lot of behind.
Brickhouse Brown.
Brickhouse Brown! And Brickhouse is styling, Joe.
They brought another guy in, called him the Snowman. I had the pleasure of wrestling him.
Jake the Snake, he tried to take me out. These thunder cookers, he can't do nothing with it.
Did not work.
I want the sucker right down here in the middle of his brain right now.
Butch Reed was a very good wrestler, but he wasn't a dog. He was a bodybuilder. He was too pretty, not that big, bad son of a bitch that people could identify with. And on and on.
So no replacement here, right?
No, none. Forget about it.
They were good guys. They tried, but replacing a legend? That's like hiring the next cowboy to replace John Wayne. How the hell are you going to do that?
The fans of the WWF welcomed JYD with open arms and thunderous applause.
This place has gone bananas.
But
And he certainly has his legions of fans here by the thousands. And these fans are with him all the way. He is comfy.
McMahon did a phenomenal job of marketing JYD when he hired him. I will give him that.
You have become one of the most popular athletes in the World Wrestling Federation, perhaps in the most shortest length of time of anyone ever to enter the ring.
You know, I've been very fortunate. A lot of help come from just understanding people and get along with people and, make no difference what race or color it is.
Financially, it was the best move Dog ever made. He told me one time he was making 6 figures a quarter on his action figure.
That's the 3rd time my junkyard's been burgled this month.
There's only one way to protect this place, amigo. You've got to get yourself a junkyard dog.
I thought that was cool, seeing the cartoons on Saturday mornings, his action figure, the music video, all that stuff. That was pretty cool as a kid to see.
What was his tune on the album?
Grab Them Cakes. They couldn't sing for shit, though.
It's hard to start. You just go for your partners. You know what? And then you GRABTAGFCAKES. Grab them cakes.
And his dreams were all being fulfilled. He was making money. He was doing it, man. He was doing it.
Junkyard Dog and World Heavyweight Champion, Hulk Hogan.
Longevity-wise, it's hard to stick around. Extremely competitive business. Everybody wants Hogan's spot, the spot below that. A lot of hungry guys, and hard to stick around.
As the Junkyard Dog joins a WWF roster packed with some of the biggest names in wrestling, his magnetic presence can only carry him so far. Despite his best efforts, he fails to recapture the towering heights of his glory days in Mid-South.
I don't think the industry was ready to go that route. How can I say it? With a black wrestler. That's just my opinion.
I really believe that JYD thought that Vince McMahon was going to push him the same way as Bill Watts. And it didn't happen. He figured, well, I done let Louisiana down. I done let my family down. I done let Bill Watts down. He was just heartbreaking.
Having left the Mid-South territory behind for the promise of even greater fame, the Junkyard Dog fails to reach the same level of prominence in the WWF.
Me and Dog want to be climbing the mountaintop. We want to go to the promised land. We want to be with Hulk Hogan, brother.
They pushed some black wrestlers there, but as far as putting the black man in the money spot, no. Not at all. They didn't go there. So I got to put this black and white thing together all the time, because that's the only way I see it.
From 1980 to, I would say, 86, 80% of the top wrestlers were minorities in the Vince Sr. area. Vince McMahon Sr. figured that you have to have a person to represent every nationality of people, and that was his idea. Pedro Morales, Bruno Sammartino, Rocky Johnson, the Wild Samoan, Mr. Fuji, Bob Backlund. In that whole list, I mean, how many white people? 1.
But right now, let's begin the festivities. Without further ado, let's go up the ringside.
When Vince Jr. took over, where there wasn't as many minorities on top, he came with the Hulk Hogan, Ronnie Piper, Bret Hart. Well, he had a pecking order for Dog. He needed a black wrestler, but that he had to push the Caucasian wrestler. It's not racism. It was a business decision. He wanted to get the white fans to come more.
Vince McMahon didn't use him like Bill did. I wish he had, because if he'd have opened that door, I think he could have been one of the biggest stars in the WWE.
Do I think it affected him? Absolutely. And I think that was when the drugs got really bad.
Dog started off with pot, and that led to cocaine. He's just smoking. Yeah, y'all call it crack now.
Once he got into the coke, and the coke took him, he had to have it every day. JYD, he didn't care where he was at, he'd just pull it out and do it. On airplanes and everything, man.
He got me in trouble one time. They were doing a TNT thing that Vince used to do. He said, I want you to make sure he get there. They got a Lear jet for him, a nice jet. So when Dog landed, they got the guy with the limousine to pick us up at the airport. Dog had a limousine job to go in the ghetto to get some dope. So they driving around. Dog, we gotta get to the building, Dog. He found somebody selling him his dope. The limousine driver had no idea what was going on. So dog asked, is it okay I smoke? The limousine driver, he thought it means cigarette. The dog said, yeah. He take out his crack pipe and started smoking crack and go, I'm gonna sit limousine driver like this. He don't know what the hell to do. We had a good dog there, but we late, which means I missed my match. Dog forgot one thing that Thunderbolt Palliser tried to teach all of us black wrestlers. Thunderbolt used to always say, you can't do what the white man do and keep your job.
By the late 1980s, the Junkyard Dog is consumed by a devastating drug addiction, and its consequences are felt far beyond the squared circle.
He didn't look good. He would talk, but he wasn't that cheerful dog that we knew. He just wasn't the same person. He didn't care what happened. He didn't care at all. I mean, he just...
Oh my God, yeah, he was out of control. I remember him sitting there in Madison Square Garden and loading a pipe up and hitting it right in front of everybody. JY, what are you doing, man? He goes, they don't even know what they don't even know what it is. You know, he was just burnt.
Oh yeah, the dog came out of his hiding place, started to begin to move up and down that ladder once again. And like I said time and time again, every dog needs a bone to chew on.
Of course, he had a drug problem. Everybody was taking drugs back then. I can't throw no stones. I A to Z. I just never had that addictive type personality. But dog, he struggled with that.
He sank into it. It was more and more, and, you know, there was no talking him out of it.
Why is he let go from the WWF?
No shows, the way I understood it.
Vince didn't care what you did, because drugs help you to go. But you miss shows, you scare them when you do that.
I didn't have no idea that he was leaving or anything like that. And that's the way the wrestling business, it was like that. They didn't give you 2 weeks notice, just tell you, hey, leave.
When a guy can't go buy groceries, you don't have any money, and you haven't seen your family, it's disheartening. He definitely had a great soul. If JYD's story isn't a cautionary tale, then people aren't paying attention.
Fired from the WWF and struggling to make ends meet, JYD turns to the independent circuit, performing in small high school gyms for diminishing crowds. After hitting rock bottom, JYD's fortunes change with an offer to join World Championship Wrestling, where his old friend and mentor Bill Watts is now in charge.
And Bill Watts came in and he knew that he could make his mark if he recaptured that black superstar.
He was likable as hell. Everybody there was happy to try to resurrect him, shall we say. I knew that his days of working on the top were over. He didn't know that. It didn't seem like he wanted to admit it, but you ain't the same guy. And you look bloated. You're not JYD right now. And at some point, you hold out hope to somebody that you love and respect. Well, they'll see the light. But let me tell you something. As my daddy would say, they got to carry their share of the water.
I get mad when I pull up stories about the first thing people say, drugs this, drugs that. You got a guy that came from nothing. They pulled him out of that environment, give him all this money, not making excuses, but yeah, he did drugs. I mean, everybody got demons.
I'm pretty sure the last time I seen him was like 1995, and I came in and he was just mumbling. That was about it, man. And I went back to where he was sitting. They said, he's in the ring. I went out to watch. They were ringing the bell. It was over. It lasted about 2 minutes. That's all he gave him. And he came back, grabbed his money, and walked out the door. Didn't say bye, didn't say hi, didn't say nothing, man. And I know exactly where he was at. He was wanting to get outside so he could get high again. I've been there. I've been there.
If he had his drug fix, he was perfectly happy to go into isolation until he needed the money. Then he'd work a show for some independent promoter for the cash.
You see, the pain that you get from the cocaine is because you look in the mirror every now and then, a moment of clarity, and you'll look at yourself and you'll see just how far down you've gone. That's painful. And it's also shameful. And those two things, man, will kill you.
In just over a decade, JYD goes from headlining the Superdome to working a part-time job at a local Walmart.
Dog is used to being treated a certain way for a long period of time, from his football career to his wrestling career. And then all of a sudden, all that is taken away from him. So you have to get used to being treated like shit, pretty much. When I hit that spot, I tried to commit suicide. I was homeless for a year and a half. I slept in the park. Didn't shower or bathe or brush my teeth or comb my hair for a year and a half. That right before Soft December. So Dog was going through the same thing. He didn't save his money. Dog was very careless with money. He was making $8,000, $10,000 a week. It just came so easy to him, and all of us felt the same way, not just Dog, that it would never end. We figured this would never end, that we always gonna be making money. We always gonna be big stars. This would never end.
So the phone rings one day and I get a call from JYD. I hadn't talked to him in quite a while, and he knows by now that, you know, I've had this change in my life and that I'm out not only doing school assemblies, but I'm speaking in churches. If you're a wrestling fan, you may have remembered the $1 Million Man. How many in this room would say you remember that guy? Yeah! And he says, I want you to encourage those kids you're talking to not to do what I did. And I was just like, wow. I did what he asked me to do. That sin, that one that goes away for a week or a month and then it rears its ugly head and it's back. Or maybe even worse, it's there every day. Drugs, alcohol, addiction. But here's a guy who was the biggest name and succumbed to drugs. And of course, that was probably one of the last conversations we had.
The last time he came home was for his daughter's graduation. He was coming from Mississippi.
Dog was real proud of his daughter. He wanted to make sure that he was at his daughter's graduation because, I mean, she would want in there too. I mean, you got to feel real proud if your dad is the junkyard dog and he walks into your graduation. It don't get no better than that. So he was certainly determined to get there.
From where he was living at in Mississippi to Charlotte, North Carolina is about a 9-hour drive one way. He misses the graduation. We're all at my mom and dad's house. He shows up. Of course, he apologizes, you know, that he was late. He holds my son for the first time. My son was 6 months old, but he looks like a little miniature baby doll in his hand. And he held him for a while, but that was the last family photo taken of him. And then later on, you know, he said, I'm gonna get back on the road. So I met him at this gas station, and there's something on the driver's side door. I'm like, dude, what's that? He goes, puke? Boy, she had a long night last night. So I didn't think nothing else about it. And I said, you gonna drive all the way back home? You're not gonna pull over to sleep or anything? So, nah, I'm just gonna go ahead and drive on, you know, make it straight home. I didn't know that was gonna be the last conversation I had with him, though.
On June 1st, 1998, after leaving a celebration of his daughter's high school graduation, the junkyard dog sets out on the long and fateful journey home.
We talked 10, 15 minutes right before he's getting ready to go. He's done gassing up and everything, and he said, well, man, I said, when you come back down? He said, man, I'll be back on the 4th. Be back on the 4th. I said, all right, well, cool, man, see you then. You know, dapped each other up. He gets in the car and he drives away. I go home. The next day, I get the call at work, and it's my mom, and she's, you know, very upset, and she said, Sylvester got killed last night. I was like, wait, what? And she rambled something, and I could barely make it out. I just heard car, he got killed, and she hangs up the phone. And according to the authorities, an accident happened that morning, so he drove all through the night. All night long. He fell asleep. There was no skid marks. You could see where the car veered off the road and it flipped several times. There's no way he could have been wearing his seatbelt because he was too damn big for that seatbelt. He shouldn't have been in that car anyway. And it was head trauma, according to the autopsy.
A lot of time when you're on the drugs, you know, you're up 3 or 4 days. Sometimes you don't get no rest until sometime the body just says, hey, I don't want no more, I'm shutting down. So that's what the body has to do to you for you to really go get rest. So I think Dog just hadn't had no rest and the body just shut down.
It broke my heart, and I'm sure it broke the world's heart. He loved Ted DiBiase. They was like brothers. And I know it broke Ted's heart.
I was very hopeful then that he was going to get better. The next thing I know, he's had a car wreck.
How did you learn about his passing?
I got a phone call when he had the car wreck. To tell you the truth, I was happy for him. Because I was still caught in the trenches. And I knew that he had escaped. I knew that the pain was over.
I started crying because I realized I never got to tell him how much I loved him. The period of time I was around him, he was such a dynamite human being. The fact of how we ended our relationship was not near as important as the time we spent together. JYD was a neat, special person. And then you also see the terrible battle that's fought when guys get something that gets a hold of them that they can't whip.
All right, so this is his grave site here. One of his last wrestling pictures. And just below him, this is his daughter.
What it was a ruptured heart valve. It actually literally exploded. There was nothing they could have done anyway. And then she passed away a few minutes after that. And she was 31 years old.
My mom comes, as you can see, with flowers and everything. Never misses a holiday, birthday.
My mom finds it very difficult to talk about Sylvester because she was so close to him and she raised LaToya as her daughter. It's just traumatic for her to go back down memory lane, so to speak. I think it just opens up too many wounds that probably hadn't fully healed.
He's a trailblazer, man. I'm sure a lot of those young guys appreciate the path that you laid for him.
Yes, he did. He paved the way for all of us. I mean, anytime he came out, you always remember JYD, and you will remember him when you left that arena that night. So Dog's legacy is he's just one of the greatest black stars in pro wrestling.
JYD did more to create awareness and acceptance within the closed world, very prejudiced world of pro wrestling. He stepped to the front of the line, and he stayed in the front of the line for many, many years. The charisma was natural and real, organic, and that's what separated him from the pack.
Oh, the crowd saying, "Who dat? Who dat? Who dat gonna beat that junkyard dog? Who dat?" This guy is a true hero.
So I prefer to remember him in the happier days and not anything else. He broke the barriers.
I mean, the fans are just all over you, dog.
It gets pretty hectic at times, but I enjoy it, man. I love it. But see, in this business, I let them get close to me.
He always had a moment for a kid or a grown-up. He had that charisma that made him a god to those that loved him, and there were so many people that loved him, black and white.
Yeah, it's hard to find anybody say something bad about JYD. He was a stand-up guy in a business where there's not a whole lot of stand-up guys.
I'm honored to introduce Sylvester Ritter, the Junkyard Dog, the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
I'm hoping that he's remembered for good stuff that he did in the industry.
LaToya Ritter will be the recipient of the award for her dad.
While I'm standing here, it's important to me, and I know it would be important to him, to introduce his sister, Christine Woodburn. He called her Big Red.
I didn't get to speak to JYD very much at the end, but again, that last conversation, when he said, "Tell my story," when you're talking to those kids, that told me, I said, the guy that I knew is back.
Furthermore, two seasoned detectives, the manner in which Angela communicated her story raised significant and deeply unsettling concerns, beyond the factual inconsistencies. And two seasoned detectives, the way Angela tells the story, is another cause for concern. Angela was not forthcoming with a lot of details. Her answers often felt guarded, evasive, lacking the natural flow and detail one might expect from a genuine victim recounting trauma. There was a notable absence of the spontaneous outpouring of fragmented memories and raw emotion that often characterizes truthful accounts of such profound distress. When she started becoming super defensive, and then shut down the interview herself, that told me something was definitely wrong with this picture. This abrupt termination of the interview, initiated by Angela herself, acted as a definitive professional alarm bell. Her defensiveness, her reticence, her ultimate act of shutting down the conversation, were not the signs of a traumatized victim struggling to articulate horrific events, but rather the classic indicators of someone attempting to conceal the truth, to manage a narrative that was rapidly crumbling under scrutiny. The meticulous work of investigation, guided by keen observation and logical deduction, had undeniably moved Angela Sanford from the precarious position of a potential victim to the undeniable status of a prime suspect, signaling an unsettling discovery waiting just beyond the horizon. The real reason for Angela and Joel's wilderness trip, cloaked in fabricated rituals and deceptive intent, was now teetering on the precipice of full revelation. The very air seemed charged with an unspoken malevolence, hinting at secrets far darker than any initial report could convey. The final piece of the puzzle that Angela Sanford unwittingly provided, even if in her mind it was merely a misdirection, detonated an explosive wave of suspicion among the investigative team. The incongruity was so profound, so jarring, that it sent a cold shiver down the spines of even the most hardened detectives. All kinds of bells went off at that point. This was the moment of chilling clarity, where all the subtle dissonances and glaring contradictions in Angela's narrative converged into a single, terrifying truth. Why would she list them as sacrifice unless that was her actual intent? The question hung in the air, rhetorical and self-answering. After their deeply troubling, and ultimately aborted, interview with Angela Sanford, investigators were no longer merely questioning the veracity of her story. They were systematically dismantling it, piece by agonizing piece. A profound sense of doubt had permeated the entire team, leading them to fundamentally re-evaluate every aspect of her wilderness trip with Joel Levi. Their caution, initially driven by a professional commitment to victim empathy, now manifested as a meticulous pursuit of unvarnished truth, but they want to tread carefully. This ongoing carefulness underscored the ethical imperative, even when confronted with profound suspicion, to ensure justice was blind and evident. The journey towards truth began, decisively, with an exhaustive analysis of her sexual assault examination. The objective medical and forensic findings provided a crucial, unimpeachable counter-narrative to Angela's harrowing claims. Through that examination, they did not find evidence that there was sexual intercourse, and they did not find anything that they believed would be consistent with sexual violence. This was a foundational blow to her entire defense. The absence of specific physical indicators was not merely a lack of confirmation. It was a strong, active disconfirmation of her account. No evidence of defensive marks, bruising, or scrapes of anything other than some abrasions, mild abrasions on her knees. The common, painful hallmarks of a violent struggle or rope burns she claimed from the attempted binding. The deep bruises from a forceful assault were simply not present. There was nothing. No rope burns, no semen, no anything that would corroborate any beliefs that she had been sexually assaulted. The persona of the criminal psychology analyst might reflect on how often perpetrators, when fabricating a story, miss the subtle yet crucial physical details that would lend it authenticity. Angela's story, stripped bare by forensic science, proved utterly unsustainable. For Joel Lava's family, who had weathered the initial, horrifying accusations against their loved one, the findings of the examination were profound. To hear those allegations against my father that he could have committed something like that, I didn't believe it. Their steadfast belief in Joel's character, his inherent goodness, had remained unshaken, even in the face of widespread speculation. I was like, there's no way. That's not who he was. The forensic results unequivocally supported their conviction. The fact that there was not only no evidence of an actual rape, but no real evidence of an attempted rape, that obviously is a problem for Ms. Sanford's story. The prosecutor, ever pragmatic, recognized this as the Achilles heel of Angela's carefully constructed. The autopsy conducted on Joel Lava served as another damning piece of evidence, further disputing Angela's claims and vividly illustrating the sheer brutality of his death. She had said that she had stabbed him about 3 times and then run away. Her attempt to minimize her actions, to present a narrative of proportionate, defensive force, was exposed as a grotesque lie, and he was stabbed well over 20 times. The cold, hard fact of 20-plus stab wounds screamed a truth far darker than so. This was not a panicked flailing for survival. It was a sustained, ferocious assault, imbued with a deeply personal that many stab wounds indicated it was personal. It wasn't defensive in my experience. This assessment by an experienced investigator underscored the profound difference between an act of self-preservation and an act of calculated, excessive violence. The overkill itself was a chilling signature of something pathological, something driven by an intense emotional charge beyond the scope of a mere struggle. When Joel's loved ones were confronted with the excruciating details of his death, their grief was amplified by a fresh wave of disbelief and anguish regarding the character assassination inherent in Angela's lies. When Joel's loved ones are informed of the circumstances of his death, they find it even harder to believe. The conflicting narratives created an unbearable burden of emotional and psychological confusion. We had so many questions, and we shouldn't have any answers. A very, very emotional time. The struggle to reconcile the man they knew with the allegations against him was agonizing. Hearing those stories come out and reading about those stories, it was not him. Their profound conviction in his innocence, particularly regarding the fantastical Wiccan ceremony, was unwavering. The family made it very, very clear that there's no way that he would have gone to practice this Wiccan. Joe LeVar was a man anchored in his faith. He was a practicing Catholic who was very committed to his faith. The very notion of him participating in such a ritual was an absurdity, a profound insult to his spiritual life. Hearing the word wicked, that was a shock. I remember them asking something about if he practiced it, anything like that. Obviously, he didn't. The swift and resolute denial from his family highlighted the fundamental truth of his deeply ingrained religious beliefs. He was very well loved by his family. He was married, a large family. He was a very religious man. These were not empty declarations. They were descriptions of a man whose life was a testament to his values, utterly incompatible with Angela's grotesque portrayal. The family continued to insist, with fervent certainty, that Joel would never harm another human being, least of all commit an act of sexual assault. The family insists Joel would never harm another person, let alone commit sexual assault. I first heard that she was claiming that he raped her. This accusation, deeply offensive and fundamentally untrue, wounded them profoundly. My father, very open, very friendly, very giving. His very essence, his lived practice of kindness and respect, defied such a heinous charge. My dad always told us every letter comes on a woman. I know he believed that. I know he lived like that. This deeply held belief, ingrained from childhood, was a cornerstone of his character. So hearing all that, it made us even more angry. Their anger was not merely a facet of grief. It was a righteous indignation at the slander perpetrated against a good man. Yet, even with all the mounting evidence discrediting Angela's account, investigators still faced a profound psychological question. Why would she construct such an elaborate and utterly bizarre story? Her motivation remained an elusive, dark core. A meticulous background check into Angela Sanford's past began to shed alarming light on her behavioral pattern, offering fragmented pieces of a troubling personal history. Still, investigators questioned why Angela would make up such an elaborate and unusual account. A background check provides some alarming answers. The revelations revealed a disturbing pattern, an echo from her past. Angela Sanford, in 1999, had made an allegation of rape. This wasn't a singular, isolated event. She claimed that she went willingly with two guys to a motel. There they did some illegal drugs and she ended up being raped at gunpoint. The narrative shared striking similarities with her current account. Elements of it followed by an alleged sexual assault. However, her actions following that earlier allegation significantly undermined its credibility. But she didn't want to move forward in that case. It seems she didn't really have the response to the investigators that they were looking for. Her lack of cooperation, her apparent disinterest in pursuing justice for a horrific crime she described, was a profound red flag. She kind of skipped out on the scheduled interview time, and so the case was dropped. The persona of a criminal psychologist would note this consistent pattern, a claim of severe victimization followed by a withdrawal from the official process, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and unpursued justice. While acknowledging the profound challenges faced by victims, it takes a lot for people to come forward, victims, and disclose that they've been sexually assaulted. So it is possible that it was a legitimate complaint. The cumulative effect of these repeated patterns, especially in light of the current homicide, could not be ignored. It established a troubling propensity for manipulation and deception. To gain even deeper insight into Angela's recent history and her state of mind leading up to the tragic encounter, officers recognized the crucial importance of interviewing her current boyfriend. They secured his contact information and requested that he come to the station. His testimony, delivered with an initial defensive loyalty, eventually provided invaluable, unfiltered details that dramatically peeled back Angela's carefully constructed to gain insight into Angela's history. Officers obtained the contact information for her boyfriend and request that he come to the station for an interview. He confirmed her movements on the day of the crime. He stated that he did drop her off at the trailhead, and she had told him, "Come back in about an hour." This detail solidified the prearranged nature of Angela's presence at the secluded location. His subsequent attempts to contact her further elaborated on the timeline. So in about an hour he called. She didn't answer. He called again. Didn't answer. His mundane conclusion. So he assumed that she was ignoring him, or that she had just turned off the phone, belied the horrific events that were, at that very moment, unfolding. Crucially, however, Angela's boyfriend offered a devastating counter-narrative to her claims of spiritual practice. But according to Angela's boyfriend, the reason she gave for going on the trip is dubious at best. He told us that she was not a Wiccan, that she was a Wiccan wannabe. This single, stark phrase utterly shattered the spiritual pretext for the meeting, exposing it as a cynical, ill-conceived fabrication. Her Wiccan ceremony was merely a costume, poorly worn. The boyfriend's insights offered a glimpse into Angela's formative years and the complex psychological landscape that likely shaped her later behaviors. Miss Sanford was born and raised here in Albuquerque. She was born into a family where there was considerable dysfunction. The roots of her pathology were deeply embedded in a troubled upbringing, and she described her relationship with her father as one of fear and hatred. This early trauma, particularly the deep-seated emotional wounds from a difficult paternal relationship, provided a powerful psychological framework for understanding her later struggles and her gravitation towards power fantasies. At the tender age of 19, Angela had attempted to forge a new path, escaping her turbulent home environment by moving to Illinois with her then-boyfriend. At 19, Angela moved to Illinois with her boyfriend at the time, and they both were into the alternative religions, the occult and paganism. This period marked a deeper immersion into a world of esoteric beliefs and countercultural identities. She sort of began to lean more into the occult, which could possibly have just been a way to escape. For many, alternative spiritualities offer a sense of belonging, purpose, or control where traditional structures have failed them. However, Angela's engagement with these practices appeared less structured, more idiosyncratic, even dangerous. There wasn't solely pagan or solely Wiccan. She would go into the woods alone with books, candles, other things to do, rituals that she felt were, aligned into these beliefs. This was not a community-sanctioned practice. It was a solitary, self-guided journey into what she imagined to be the occult, dangerously unmoored from any guiding tradition or critical feedback. She was making her own kind of conglomerate of a religion. This self-styled spiritual path, of personal interpretations and dark fascinations, represented a psychological space where fantasy and reality could become perilously blurred. The detective novelist persona might observe that such unguided excursions into the esoteric often opened doors to internal landscapes that proved difficult to navigate safely, especially for those already struggling with a fragile grasp on reality. It almost felt like you didn't want to tread too far down, because you weren't really sure what you were going to find out, and if you wanted to know. This visceral sense of foreboding captured the deeply unsettling nature of Angela's internal world, signaling a trajectory toward a profound unraveling. After that, I had my doubts about Angela's story. The accumulating weight of the boyfriend's testimony and the deep understanding of her psychological profile transformed suspicion into an almost certain conviction that Angela Sanford harbored secrets far darker and more sinister than anyone had initially imagined. Investigators, armed with this increasingly disturbing portrait of Angela Sanford's complicated history and profound obsession with dark magic, were now able to piece together a coherent, albeit horrifying, psychological profile. Despite the overwhelming evidence of her deception, Angela's boyfriend initially attempted to shield her, clinging to the belief in her innocence. Despite her past, Angela's boyfriend says he doesn't believe she's capable of such a brutal crime. He defended Ms. Sanford vigorously that there is no way that she would have done this, that he completely supported her story. This staunch loyalty, however, underscored the persuasive nature of Angela's victim persona, even to those closest to her. Yet, the boyfriend's testimony served a critical function, becoming a crux piece that gave you an insight to who she was in the days leading up to this and what she's watching, what she's indulging in, and how that led to this very real situation. His insights painted a picture of a mind increasingly consumed by unsettling fascinations. Angela Sanford's online alter ego provided the most chilling, unfiltered window into her descent into darkness. When investigators take a look at Angela Sanford's online alter ego, they find evidence of a deeply troubled woman. Her digital footprint was a sprawling testament to a psyche captivated by the macabre and the malevolent. She had 2 different social media accounts, one of those being a MySpace account, I believe, at the time. And that had a lot more of, like, pentagrams, and things that really referenced more of a satanic lifestyle, a satanic workshop. The prevalence of these dark symbols was not merely a superficial interest, it indicated a deep engagement, a powerful identification with themes traditionally associated with anti-religious or adversarial spiritual practices. Angela's online activity was far from passive observation. It was an active cultivation of her alter ego. Angela was very active on her social media. She would post about vampires and dark beings. These gothic fascinations, while often harmless for many, took on a profoundly disturbing dimension in Angela's case. However, it was her morbid interest in real-world atrocities and the individuals who perpetrated them that truly alarmed investigators. She also was very interested in serial killers and the notoriety that they would gain from their crimes. This fascination transcended mere curiosity. It ventured into a dangerous psychological territory. The criminal psychology analyst in the persona might offer. Sometimes when you have somebody who really gets enthralled with serial killers, enthralled with the idea of murder, they start fantasizing about murder. This progression, from intellectual interest to obsessive fantasy, represented a critical, perilous shift, a blurring of the line between thought and potential action. It implied a cultivation of homicidal ideation, a mental rehearsal of violence, fueled by a desire for power and notoriety. Given Angela's insistent claims about participating in a specific Wiccan ceremony, and recognizing their own professional limitations in understanding the intricacies of such belief systems, detectives wisely sought expert consultation. Detectives are unfamiliar with any of the rituals and beliefs Angela was practicing, so they reach out to local experts. This step underscored their commitment to separating genuine religious practice from individual pathological behavior. The feedback was unequivocal. I called the local covenant, and I ended up speaking to them, and they ended up telling me that Beltane usually occurs in May, not in March, when this incident occurred. This definitive refutation of her central claim regarding the Wiccan holiday cemented the understanding that Angela's spiritual justifications were nothing more than a carefully constructed, but ultimately flawed, pretext for a far more sinister purpose. Her facade of being a genuine practitioner collapsed under the weight of easily verifiable facts. The most damning, irrefutable evidence, however, lay hidden within the cold, impartial data of her phone records. These digital breadcrumbs proved to be the ultimate arbiter of truth, unveiling Angela's true, predatory intent. Detectives subpoena Angela's phone records to see for themselves what Angela and Joel discussed. The dispassionate logs exposed her careful deception, revealing her as the instigator, not Joel. Angela says they meet at the casino, right? And kinda just spark up a conversation, agree to kinda meet again. She started to claim that he was the one who reached out. And it wasn't until the phone records came back that detectives realized, no, she called him. The records were unambiguous. Angela actively pursued Joel, orchestrating their meeting with a calculated design. She told him, I want to see you, and let's get together. This wasn't a random encounter or Joel's unsolicited overture. It was Angela's deliberate act of engagement. But the final, horrifying confirmation of her true intentions was enshrined in the digital nomenclature of her phone itself. It was a detail so stark, so utterly chilling, that it solidified the entire gruesome puzzle. But it's clear the invitation had nothing to do with convincing Joel to convert. When I finally found his contact in her phone, she didn't list him as Joel Leva or just Joel. The usual identifiers were absent. Instead, a single, horrifying word replaced his name. She listed him as Sacrifice. This single, chosen word, direct and unadorned, screamed her dark purpose. All kinds of bells went off at that point. This was the profound moment of definitive understanding, where every prior inconsistency, every psychological indicator, every forensic detail coalesced into a terrifyingly coherent narrative of premeditated murder. Her feigned surprise, her feigned victory, her elaborate stories all dissolved in the face of this one chilling revelation. She told us that she was there for a Wiccan ceremony. Why would she list him as Sacrifice, unless that was her actual intent in meeting Joel in the first place? The question, now resounding with horrifying clarity, admitted only one answer. This devastating revelation confirmed investigators' worst suspicions, painting an unambiguous picture of a calculated, cold-blooded murder. The revelation confirms investigators' worst suspicions. The fact that she listed him as sacrifice, the fact that she lured him to a spot where nobody could see them, all led me to believe that she had intentionally planned this out to kill Joel as part of her so-called Wiccan celebration. The persona of the detective novelist would observe the tragic precision of her plan, the deliberate targeting of a kind, trusting man, the carefully chosen, secluded location, the feigned spiritual pretext, and the chilling foresight to rename her victim to reflect his destined role. All aspects pointed to an execution, not a spontaneous struggle. Moda answers why. The only person that could answer that one is Angela herself. She's the only one that could tell us why she did what she did. While the modus operandi and the intent were now agonizingly clear, the deeper, psychological genesis of her motivation remained locked within the dark recesses of her own disturbed mind. The veil of deception had been utterly torn away, revealing a calculated, horrifying On March 24th, 2 days after the brutal and senseless death of Joel Levine, the weight of overwhelming evidence finally coalesced, leading to the inevitable. Angela Sanford was arrested. On March 24th, 2 days after Joel's death, Angela is arrested. This moment marked a critical turning point in the tragic saga, as the carefully constructed illusion of victimhood shattered, replaced by the grim reality of criminal culpability. For the legal team assigned to the case, the arrest signaled the beginning of a complex judicial process, one that, while supported by substantial evidence, would present its own unique challenges. It was disturbing, and made me frankly feel better, as we were about to go to a grand jury to say, this is a predetermined first-degree murder, and that she needed to be charged for it. The meticulous, unwavering efforts of the investigative forces had succeeded in building a compelling case for premeditated murder, demonstrating Angela's intent beyond a reasonable doubt. Despite the formidable body of evidence amassed against Angela, the prosecuting attorneys faced an inherent, unsettling challenge. The potential for a jury, swayed by powerful emotional appeals, or the deeply ingrained perception of a vulnerable woman, to sympathize with her. Despite the evidence against Angela, prosecutors still fear a jury might sympathize with her. Angela's past, replete with claims of abuse, presented a narrative thread that could, if skillfully manipulated, evoke compassion, blurring the lines of justice. This is a woman that has had a history of relationships with abusive men. This background, even if unsubstantiated in legal contexts, offered a potential emotional defense, a means of casting doubt on her malicious intent. If she was able to convince one or more jurors that what she had initially said was true, then she could have certainly hung the jury, and then the murder potentially goes free. The very real risk of a hung jury, or even an outright acquittal stemming from lingering sympathy, loomed large, a strategic imperative that weighed heavily on the prosecution's decision-making process. The scales of justice, while striving for impartiality, are always vulnerable to the complexities of human emotion. In the wake of Angela Sanford's arrest, the disturbing details of the case, initially whispered in hushed tones, swiftly proliferated throughout the town of Albuquerque. The sheer bizarre nature of the alleged ritualistic killing, shrouded in claims of occult practice, captured public attention. Following Angela Sanford's arrest, word of the disturbing case spreads quickly through the town of Albuquerque. However, the narrative of Wiccan ceremony proved problematic for a particular segment of the community, generating understandable concern and distress. But not everyone is pleased by the publicity. There was a lot of concern from people in the Wiccan community that we were trying to paint the Wiccan community as somebody who would be into committing murder as a part of a ceremony and things like that. This reaction underscored the delicate balance required when dealing with crimes involving unusual or fringe belief systems. From the very outset, the investigative and legal teams recognized the importance of distinguishing Angela's individual pathology from a legitimate spiritual practice. And so from the very beginning, we tried to be very clear that we didn't believe that this was truly a Wiccan ceremony. This conscious effort aimed to prevent unfair accusations or collective defamation against an entire community based on one individual's twisted action. Further research and expert consultation definitively clarified the benevolent nature of genuine Wiccan traditions, contrasting sharply with Angela's grotesque misrepresentation. I learned that Wiccans don't sacrifice, This fact was fundamental. Beltane was about celebrating the earth, the renewal of the earth. The very holiday Angela cited as a justification was, in its true form, a celebration of life, rebirth, and natural cycles. It's a very generally nature-based religion. The persona of the criminal psychology analyst might reflect on this common pattern. Individuals with dark impulses often appropriate elements of spirituality, twisting them into justifications for their own malevolent desires, fundamentally corrupting the essence of the original practice. Prosecutors, after rigorous deliberation and a thorough understanding of all evidence, arrived at a firm conclusion regarding Angela's true motives. Prosecutors believe Angela's twisted interpretation of the rituals were a pretense for murder. Her claims of spiritual practice were merely a flimsy veil for premeditated violence. The ultimate question reverberated through the legal process. What would drive this woman to take this victim, this man, that she met at a casino and lure him basically to the mountains and murder him in cold blood? The chilling answer was found in her calculated actions and the definitive evidence of the sacrifice label. Clearly, in my mind, she targeted him. This conclusion spoke to an absence of random chance, a presence of deliberate, predatory selection. The underlying psychological motivation, deduced from her history and obsessions, began to form a clearer picture. This identity was her compensatory mechanism of having power as a solution for her early life, where she felt she didn't have it. Her immersion in the occult and her fascination with serial killers provided a distorted pathway to a sense of control and agency that she perceived as missing from her past, culminating in a horrific act of violence. Faced with the inherent unpredictability of a trial by jury, and desiring the certainty of conviction, the prosecution made a strategic decision. Jonathan told us, he wanted to do the plea deal, because you never know what can happen in a trial. Ultimately, we agreed to it. This pragmatic approach, while perhaps not satisfying the desire for the most severe penalty, ensured that Angela Sanford would be held accountable for her heinous crime. We decided to offer a second-degree murder that was aggravated. This plea carried with it a substantial prison sentence, a testament to the severity of the offense. We wanted the guarantee of the conviction. In the pursuit of justice, a certain conviction for a significant sentence is often preferable to the risk of an uncertain outcome. Angela accepted the plea deal, a quiet admission of her profound culpability. In December 2011, she made her appearance in court for sentencing, a day charged with a potent mix of solemnity and profound, unyielding grief for Joel Lavar's family. Angela accepts the plea deal, and in December 2011, she appears in court for sentencing. This was the long-awaited moment, a chance for the family to confront the woman who had ripped Joel from their lives. There was a bunch of us in the family that showed up in court, and that's what we all saw her for the first time. The air in the courtroom crackled with raw emotion. One family member recounted a chilling moment of direct contact. She looked at me because I looked a little bit like Joel, so while I was caught, she looked at me for a second and we just stared at each other. In that silent, intense exchange, the depths of their shared tragedy and the magnitude of her crime hung heavy, and I just stared at her like, took my brother, really? The anguish, the disbelief, the profound sense of loss were palpable. Angela's legal defense team, in a final effort to mitigate her sentence, put forth an argument centered on her mental state. Angela's lawyers asked for a reduced sentence, arguing that her perception of reality is impaired. This defense sought to portray her as a woman detached from the objective world, perhaps genuinely believing in her warped justifications. It didn't ever feel like she really was attuned to what was kind of happening around her. You almost got the sense from her that it's like she didn't understand where her fantasy ended and where reality began. This psychological assessment, while providing a theoretical framework, ultimately lacked concrete evidentiary support within the courtroom. However, they are unable to produce any witnesses to support her. Without external corroboration, this defense carried limited weight. I don't remember anybody coming to speak on her behalf to try to convince the judge to give her a lesser sentence, and ultimately, he didn't. He gave her the maximum sentence he was allowed to. The judge's decision, reflective of the egregious nature of the crime and a cold premeditation involved, delivered a measure of justice commensurate with her admitted actions. In a final act of unsettling silence, Angela Sanford chose not to address the court, offering no verbal explanation for her horrific actions, no insight into the why that continued to plague the victim's family. She doesn't give a statement. Her silence underscored the profound psychological chasm between her distorted internal world and the objective reality of the courtroom. The information that we have is she felt like she had to sacrifice somebody, and regrettably, that person was Mr. Levy. This chilling conclusion, derived from the concrete evidence and her actions, remains the closest the justice system and the world would ever come to understanding the motive behind her unspeakable act. It speaks to a deep, dark conviction within her, however warped and terrifying. For Joel LeVar's family, who had endured immeasurable pain and suffering, the 20-year sentence, while a measure of accountability, could never fully balance the scales of justice for the life so cruelly taken. As a family, 20 years is not enough for what she did. What she admitted to doing should have been life in prison and never see the light of day again. Their profound grief and sense of injustice were raw and palpable, speaking to the irreplaceable loss they had suffered. The grotesque nature of the crime, the premeditated human sacrifice disguised as a ritual, left an indelible mark on all who encountered the case. This was somebody who had lured somebody to this location to complete a human sacrifice. The sheer depravity inherent in such an act transcended the ordinary understanding of criminality. I don't care how tough and crusty of an investigator you are, that's chilling to the bone. This sentiment, echoed by a seasoned professional, speaks to the visceral horror invoked by such calculated evil. The tragic passing of Joel LeVar remains a profound sorrow, a constant ache for his loved ones. I feel for the family of Mr. Leva. You know, they lost a good man. His absence created an irreparable void, a daily reminder of a life unjustly, brutally cut short. His family's words resonate with an enduring love and an unshakable sense of his lasting presence. I miss you, El. I miss you, bro. I know you'll never forget you. All that memories that I've cherished and I've achieved forever. The testament to his kindness, his friendship, his deep faith, lives on in the hearts of those who knew him. There's probably not a day that goes by I don't think of him. There's not a day that goes by I don't think about my dad. His memory is woven into the very fabric of their everyday lives, a comforting presence in moments both mundane and profound. You know, riding in my truck to work, the song comes on the radio and I know my dad loves this song and I just feel the sense that he's with me, even in their enduring grief. His spirit remains a source of comfort and strength, a testament to the enduring power of love in the face of unspeakable tragedy. The tragic case of Angela Sanford and Joel Leva stands as a potent, unsettling narrative for the professional criminal psychology analyst and detective novelist. A grim study in the fragility of the human mind and the dark paths it can sometimes tread. It is a chilling illustration of how a profound sense of personal dysfunction, particularly when exacerbated by unchecked obsessions and a perilous blurring of fantasy and reality, can tragically culminate in an act of calculated, unprovoked violence. The subtle irony, perhaps even a gentle satire targeting the criminal's profound weaknesses, lies in Angela's inept attempts to cloak her malevolent intentions in the guise of an easily disproven Wiccan ceremony. Her desperate grab for power, fueled by a deeply troubled past and a fascination with notoriety, exposed her not as an enigmatic occult, but as a desperately deluded individual whose carefully constructed lie rapidly crumbled under the piercing gaze of forensic evidence and logical analytical thinking. This narrative profoundly underscores the paramount importance of meticulous investigation, where every seemingly minor detail, from a neatly folded pile of clothes to the chronological inaccuracy of a purported ritual, contributes to the dismantling of a fabricated truth. It highlights the unwavering efforts of the investigative forces, the dedicated police officers, the astute detectives, the compassionate paramedics, the rigorous forensic specialists, and the unwavering prosecutors who, despite confronting scenes of human depravity that are chilling to the bone, remain steadfast in their pursuit of justice. Their tireless work, often unseen and unheralded, is a testament to their humanity and empathy, ensuring that even in the face of the most bizarre and sinister crimes, truth ultimately prevails. The profound humanistic meaning embedded in this story extends beyond the legal outcome. It serves as an educational beacon, raising awareness within the community about the complex interplay of psychological vulnerability, unchecked obsessive behavior, and the insidious way in which a distorted reality can lead to horrific acts. It reminds us that empathy must be balanced with critical scrutiny, and that while acknowledging individual struggles, accountability for egregious actions must be unflinching. The victim, Joel Leva, a man defined by his faith, kindness, and generosity, remains at the heart of this narrative. His unjust fate underscores the sacredness of human life and the devastating ripple effect of violence on families and communities. The tireless dedication of those who pursued his justice is a profound honor to his memory, inspiring the triumph of good over evil. In recounting such a profound tragedy, the aim is to provide healthy entertainment in the truest sense and engagement with a compelling human drama that, while confronting darkness, ultimately champions the light of justice. It steadfastly avoids extreme dramatization or cheaps, instead focusing on the meticulous process of uncovering truth and the profound human impact of crime. It creates no feelings of heaviness, despair, or psychological shock beyond what is inherent in the facts of the case, instead fostering an appreciation for the courage of those who uphold the law and the resilience of those who endure unimaginable loss. The New Mexico desert, a landscape of profound beauty and unforgiving starkness, bore witness to a crime of terrifying intent. But through the unwavering pursuit of truth, the silence of the desert was broken, and justice, clear and unequivocal, was finally delivered for Joel. The triumph of dedicated investigation over dark obsession, and of truth over elaborate deception, echoes eternally, a timeless testament to the enduring quest for human righteousness. The stark beauty of the New Mexico desert, particularly the foothills embracing Albuquerque, held a profound serenity on the 22nd of March, 2010. Spring was gently stirring, imbuing the air with a freshness that drew people out. Hikers, seeking the natural majesty and peace, frequented the Copper Trailhead, a beloved escape. Albuquerque itself stood as an exceptional desert oasis, a city framed by mountains, offering both urban comforts and wild, untamed landscapes. In this particular location, the rhythm of life often led many to these trails. A multitude of individuals would conclude their workday, transitioning from the demands of their professional lives to the calming embrace of nature, finding a restorative balance through exercise, quiet contemplation, and the simple pursuit of a moment of peace and solitude. Yet, on this specific day, as the sun began its languid descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the prevailing serenity was violently, unequivocally, shattered by a deeply disturbing discovery that would forever mar the tranquility of the place, and irrevocably alter the lives of many. A little before 6 o'clock in the evening, a time when shadows lengthen and the desert takes on a soft and ethereal quality, the peace was abruptly pierced by a scene of utter bewilderment and immediate horror. The initial report was fragmented, almost unbelievable in its raw detail, speaking to the profound shock of those who first encountered it. "She's just wearing her underwear in a paradox." This fragmented description painted a vivid, unsettling image of profound vulnerability and distress, indicating an individual in an acute state of disarray and potential trauma. The words, uttered with a frantic urgency, carried a chilling weight. She said that she had been raped. This accusation, stark and immediate, propelled the unfolding drama into the grim reality of a police emergency. The call reached law enforcement with utmost swiftness and an undeniable sense of urgency, signaling the severe nature of the incident. We get the call of a woman that is in the foothills that one of the witnesses came upon, and they immediately dispatch officers. The rapid deployment of personnel underscored the gravity of the situation, initiating a cascade of events that would strip away the desert's quiet fucade to reveal a hidden darkness. Before the cacophony of emergency sirens could fully break the pervasive hush of the approaching evening, before the uniformed presence of law enforcement could arrive, a profound act of human compassion had already taken place. Bystanders, driven by an inherent desire to help, had actively intervened, attempting to alleviate the woman's immediate distress and gathering her belongings. They have retrieved the woman's clothes from the scene of the crime, a detail that would later prove to be unexpectedly significant in the larger narrative. Police, responding with the methodical precision of trained professionals, quickly located the woman further along the winding, dusty trail, near a crude, makeshift encampment. She identified herself as Angela Sanford, a woman in her third decade of life, specifically 30 years old. The eyewitness accounts concerning her appearance provided a stark and distressing picture. The witnesses described that she had been wearing a bikini top, underwear, and socks and had blood. This scanty and disheveled attire, stained with what appeared to be blood, immediately underscored the brutal nature of her alleged ordeal, lending initial credence to her profound claims of victimization. Her immediate and unwavering assertion was deeply unsettling. She claimed that she had been raped and that the person was close by. In her agitated state, Angela was unable to furnish extensive or coherent details regarding the exact condition or precise location of her attacker. However, the accompanying witnesses, whose initial discovery had sparked this cascade of events, provided a crucial and alarming update. They reported that the male is laying unconscious up the trail. This information immediately broadened the scope of the police response, transforming a suspected sexual assault into a scenario involving an unresponsive individual, a potentially fatal escalation. The officers, prioritizing the immediate safety and well-being of Angela, first ensured that she was secure and under the care of medical professionals. After making sure Angela is safe, officers leave her to be treated by paramedics and begin searching the area. This measured, protocol-driven response exemplified the professional approach to managing a rapidly evolving and highly volatile scene, balancing immediate humanitarian needs with urgent investigative impact. One of the men who had been a witness, still reeling from the shocking encounter, provided critical directional guidance to the officers, indicating the precise location of the unresponsive male. He pointed out to where the person who did it was at, and it was up the trail, a distance. The short, strenuous ascent led officers to a discovery, would deepen the mystery and inject a profoundly unsettling element of peculiarity into the unfolding tragedy. There, in a secluded, rugged spot shielded by the natural contours of the land, officers found a male figure. His posture was eerily composed, almost ritualistic, contributing to the immediate sense of unease. Officers found a male laying kind of in the kneeling praying position almost, with his pants a little undone, and he was This strange, almost devotional position, coupled with the disarray of his clothing, defied any immediate, easy explanation. In adherence to strict law enforcement protocol concerning officer safety, a paramount concern in any potentially hostile or unpredictable environment, immediate measures were taken. Despite his unresponsive state, he was handcuffed. This standard procedure, intended to neutralize any potential threat before a full assessment, would later become a grim and ironic detail when the full truth of the situation came to light. With the immediate safety concerns addressed, officers carefully maneuvered the body, and then they rolled him over onto his back, and that's when they saw the stab wounds. The sight was shocking, visually confirming the horrific nature of the violence inflicted. He had stab wounds on his chest, and it looked like on his face and in his neck as well. The sheer number and distribution of these wounds already signaled a level of brutality that transcended a simple defensive action. Paramedics, whose expertise was initially sought for Angela, were now urgently Paramedics were called out to the scene, and they were the ones that actually pronounced him as deceased. Life had departed, leaving behind a chilling tableau of violence. A wallet, a mundane item of everyday life found on the deceased, provided his identity. He had a wallet on him, and we identified the deceased person that we had in custody as 50-year-old Joe Laver from Albuquerque. The name, at this initial juncture of the investigation, was merely a crucial data point, but it was the name of a man whose life story, a narrative of faith and profound kindness, stood in stark and ultimately tragic contrast to the circumstances of his brutal end. The gravity of the unfolding events rapidly escalated, necessitating the involvement of specialized expertise. Detectives and the assigned prosecutor are called to the puzzling scene. These individuals, seasoned by years of confronting human depravity and meticulously unraveling complex criminal enigmas, converged on the scene, each bringing their unique lens of experience to bear on the unfolding mystery. As soon as I arrived, one of the key detectives would later recount, the memory of that day's initial shock still palpable. One of the detectives told me that it was their understanding that a woman had stabbed a man who was trying to rape her. This initial understanding, derived directly from Angela Sanford's frantic claims, formed the foundational premise upon which the preliminary investigation was structured. The presumption, based on immediate survivor testimony, naturally leaned towards Angela as a victim. Myself and the detectives went up to the crime scene to do a walk. This methodical survey, a critical ritual of any homicide investigation, began the slow, deliberate process of scrutinizing every detail, seeking to reconcile the narrative with the cold, impartial reality of the physical environment. The first visual impact upon entering the core crime scene immediately presented a detail that, while perhaps understandable given initial circumstances, would soon become a point of deep professional unease. And the first thing you see, of course, is the decedent right there on the ground handcuffed behind his back. The image of a deceased individual, purportedly an aggressor, secured with handcuffs, introduced a peculiar incongruity. that subtly, but distinctly, gnawed at the developing narrative. Further details within the tableau added to the disc. There was a rope on the ground to the right. There was also a dagger on the ground. These objects, seemingly disparate elements, would ultimately become critical components in piecing together the true, horrifying sequence of events. In the periphery of this grim, unfolding drama, the rhythm of civilian life continued, albeit with a growing undercurrent of unease. In the area, there are some people who are just walking through doing their normal hiking. Their innocent presence underscored the jarring contrast between the ordinary serenity of the location and the extraordinary violence that had just transpired. There are a few witnesses who are standing around waiting to be talked to, including Miss Sanford. These initial eyewitnesses were paramount, holding fragile fragments of information from the immediate aftermath. Observations that were critical to capture before they could fade or become distorted by subsequent reflection. They kept the witnesses there at the scene and started interviewing them immediately. Time was of the essence, as raw, immediate impressions often hold the purest form of truth. However, to the discerning and highly experienced detectives, individuals whose careers had sharpened their intuition for incongruity into a finely tuned instrument, the crime scene stubbornly refused to align with the straightforward narrative initially presented. But to seasoned detectives, the crime scene simply doesn't add up. This professional consensus articulated a growing sense of skepticism, a subtle but persistent red flag. Her story was confusing. The whole thing was bizarre. These sentiments, widely shared among the investigative team, hinted at a deeper, more troubling reality lurking beneath the surface of Angela's distressed account. The core facts, initially, seemed to support her narrative. I have a woman that claims that she was raped. She has blood on her, and this man has been stabbed numerous times. However, it was the sheer scale and intensity of the violence, not simply the fact of it, that raised the most profound concerns. And there is what appears to be almost overkill that doesn't fit an act of self. This critical, analytical observation, central to the professional assessment, signaled a profound deviation from the expected. Acts of self-preservation, however brutal, rarely involve such sustained and overwhelming force. The excessive nature of Joel Lava's stab wounds spoke not of desperate survival, but of something far more visceral, far more personal, imbued with an intensity that bespoke malevolent intent rather than defensive desperation. What the hell is going on here? The rhetorical question, born of both professional bewilderment and a growing sense of profound foreboding, encapsulated the collective confusion and frustration. It marked the precise moment when the initial, seemingly clear-cut narrative of a distressed victim valiantly defending herself shattered, revealing a much darker, more and deeply unsettling tableau beneath the surface. The serenity of the desert oasis had not just been violated, it had been corrupted, transformed into a stage for a crime whose true horrific nature would require painstaking, relentless, investigative effort to fully unearth. The gentle stirrings of spring had given way to a chilling wind of suspicion. The grim, unforgiving reality of Joel Lava's death reached his family in the agonizing quiet of the early morning hours, shattering their peace with an indelible finality. Officers called my mother early in the A.M. that my father had passed. The words, delivered with a detached formality born of grim necessity. I remember just breaking down, falling to my knees. The raw, visceral outpouring of grief that erupted was a testament to the profound and enduring love for the man now irrevocably lost. We didn't even know what happened. This agonizing uncertainty, the lack of immediate context surrounding the sudden, brutal nature of his demise, compounded the family's sorrow, intertwining confusion and bewilderment into the very fabric of their profound mourning. For the Lava family, a man cherished for his warmth, his unwavering faith, and his boundless kindness, had been brutally extinguished, leaving behind a void that could never truly be filled. Joel Lava was born on June 13, 1957, in Espanola, New Mexico. His roots were deeply embedded in the arid, picturesque landscapes of his home state and in the rich, spiritual tapestry of his family. He was one of 3 brothers, raised in a household where profound religious faith was not merely a belief system, but the very cornerstone and rhythm of their daily existence. Faith has always been a big part of our family, his brother fondly recalled, painting a vivid picture of a life imbued with spiritual purpose and communal devotion. Their upbringing, while perhaps modest in material possessions, was immeasurably rich in moral fortitude, ethical principles, and shared family values. We didn't get to go out much. We were ministers' kids, pastors' kids. This lifestyle, steeped in fervent religious devotion and community service, instilled in Joel a strong ethical compass and an intrinsic sense of right and wrong that would faithfully guide his actions throughout his entire life. I had 2 older brothers, Joel, and my older brother, Amos. The sibling bond, nurtured in this environment of shared faith and mutual support, formed an early, enduring foundation of love and familial loyalty. Amos ended up going to Bible college. Joel was about to save time getting ready to go to the military. Each brother embarked upon his own distinct life path. Yet, Joel's deliberate decision to serve his nation was a profound reflection of his inherent commitment to duty, sacrifice, and the unwavering defense of his country. In 1976, a deep-seated sense of national duty resonated within Joel, stirring a powerful calling. My father felt like he had a call in the service country, so he decided to join the Marine Corps. The United States Marine Corps, renowned for its rigorous discipline, its demanding physical and mental training, and its unwavering ethos of honor, courage, and commitment, proved to be a natural and fitting choice for a young man of Joel's principled character and inherent strength. He was enlisted, and he was in there for 4 years. His dedicated tenure in this esteemed branch of the armed forces further honed his profound sense of discipline, responsibility, and unwavering dedication, solidifying the strong foundational values instilled in him during his formative years. Upon the honorable completion of his distinguished service in the Marine Corps, Joel Lavere returned to the comforting familiarity and vibrant cultural embrace of his beloved New Mexico. It was there, amidst the sun-drenched landscapes and the rich tapestry of his home state, that he found a love that would come to define his adult life. He fell deeply and irrevocably in love with a local woman named Betty Lujan. Their romance blossomed with an almost storybook serendipity, a profound connection emerging from a joyful occasion. My father and my mother were a best man, and they made up honor at her family member's wedding. In the midst of celebrating another couple's union, an undeniable and powerful spark ignited between them, forging the genesis of their own beautiful love story. They kind of just sparked. They got together and fell in love, and the rest is history, I guess. Their journey into matrimony was a testament to the enduring power of genuine connection and shared values. My parents got married in the early 80s, his son recounted, reflecting on the stable, loving, and supportive home that Joel and Betty meticulously built together. Betty Lujan Lavar embarked upon a distinguished career, leaving a lasting impact through her dedicated public service. My mother worked at a courthouse, retired from the state of New Mexico. Joel, for his part, excelled in the demanding and detail-oriented field of logistics, where his organizational skills and meticulous attention to detail truly shone. My father was in logistics, shipping and receiving. Together, they forged a powerful partnership founded upon mutual respect, unwavering support, and a shared commitment to providing a secure and fulfilling life for their burgeoning family. Over the subsequent 3 decades, a period marked by both challenges and profound joys, Joel and Betty lovingly nurtured their family, celebrating the countless blessings of parenthood, the warmth of enduring friendships, and the honest fruits of their unwavering labor. Joel and Betty had 2 children together, and spent the next 3 decades enjoying family, friends, and the fruits of their labor. Their home was a vibrant, joyous hub, brimming with warmth, laughter, and an impalpable sense of belonging. My parents had a great relationship, always laughing, always, having a good time. There was, always jokes and stuff in the house. This heartfelt portrayal of their domestic life painted a picture of uncomplicated happiness, a sanctuary of shared mirth, companionship, and genuine contentment. We did everything together. This emphasized the extraordinarily strong family bonds, the myriad shared experiences that formed the very bedrock of their collective existence. Joel Lava was not merely a dedicated family man. He possessed a singular, profound quality that universally drew people to him, an innate, boundless friendliness that effortlessly transcended all social barriers and superficial distinctions. There was people personally, it didn't take a lot to make a friend. He approached every individual with an open heart, an eager ear, and an outstretched hand of welcome. We just friendly to everybody, treated everybody fairly. This fundamental principle of fairness, equity, and genuine respect was not merely a philosophical ideal. It was a deeply ingrained tenet that he lived by. a testament to his profound human decency and unwavering moral character. His generosity, in particular, was legendary, often remarked upon by those fortunate enough to know him. My father would definitely help anybody he saw in need of any kind of help. This was not a superficial or performative benevolence. It emanated from a deep-seated, intrinsic empathy and a genuine, selfless desire to alleviate the suffering of others. We didn't have much growing up, but he gave fuel to give his shirt off his back to help somebody. The poignant image of Joel, despite his own modest means, being willing to sacrifice his last possession to aid someone in need, profoundly underscored his boundless compassion and unwavering altruism, his very essence defined by the act of giving. By 2010, a year that would tragically mark the utterly premature and violent cessation of his journey, Joel and Betty's children had matured into adulthood, establishing their own lives, pursuing their own aspirations, and beginning to raise their own families. This natural and beautiful progression of life unfolded with the profound promise of future generations and continued familial joy. The last time his son vividly recalled seeing his father remains an agonizingly poignant memory, a bittersweet farewell cloaked in the deceptive ordinariness of an everyday family moment. The last time I saw my dad, we were just hanging out and having a good time. It was just like another day for us. The quotidian, unremarkable nature of that final interaction starkly intensified the eventual grief, the sudden, brutal, and incomprehensible rupture of the mundane. I remember walking out the door, and I looked back, and I saw him sitting at the table. This seemingly innocent, final image, now irrevocably frozen in the amber of memory, would forever haunt his son, a poignant vision. Little did I know that I was never going to see him again. The profound irony, the crushing weight of unspoken goodbyes, and the tragic absence of future moments resonated through these deeply sorrowful words, articulating a loss that transcended mere physical departure. Now, this beloved patriarch, this man of deep and abiding faith, this gentle, profoundly giving soul, Joel Laver, had been discovered, stabbed to death in the serene, yet ultimately treacherous tranquility of the New Mexico foothills. And initially, the police were presented with a narrative that portrayed him as an aggressor, the victim of a desperate act of self-defense against an attempted sexual assault, claim so fundamentally antithetical to his universally recognized character that his family found it not just implausible, but deeply insulting and utterly inconceivable. This profound and heartbreaking misalignment between Joel's universally known virtuous character and the grave initial accusations cast a pall of deep suspicion and moral affront over the investigation, forcing those committed to unveiling the unvarnished truth to meticulously peel back every single layer of the story, however painful or uncomfortable the revelations might ultimately prove to be. The quiet dignity of Joel Lavar's life stood in stark opposition to the ignominy of his alleged actions, setting the stage for a methodical unmasking of deception. The initial reports from the witnesses who discovered Angela San, though chaotic, provided a seemingly coherent and distressing snapshot of a victim. Witnesses had initially said that when they came across Angela for the first time, she was wearing blue bikini top, panties, socks, and like a long stocking with holes cut in it to use as a glove. This unconventional and sparse attire, particularly the detail of the improvised glove, struck an immediate, if subtle, note of oddity, but could, in the context of extreme duress and panic, be momentarily rationalized as a desperate improvisation during a violent struggle. The visible signs of trauma, recorded as she had blood on her right thigh, and she had blood on her cheek as well, lent immediate, visceral credence to her story. The presence of fresh blood was a powerful visual corroboration of a recent violent encounter. Her spoken account of the alleged sexual assault and subsequent struggle was stark in its simplicity. She said she had gotten on top of him and then stabbed him and ran away. On a superficial level, particularly in the immediate, chaotic aftermath of such a shocking discovery, this narrative possessed a raw, believable coherence that investigators were initially compelled to consider. Everything seemed to generally make sense, an officer noted, reflecting the initial, straightforward interpretation of events. However, the sheer traumatic nature of Angela's experience, as presented, also limited her immediate ability to provide granular, coherent details, which is a common phenomenon in victims of extreme violence. Since Angela is too distraught to provide police with more details, officers prepared to take her in for a routine assault examination. This step was critical not only for her immediate well, and the necessary medical care, but also for the crucial forensic collection of potential evidence. A standard and compassionate protocol in cases of alleged sexual assault. Yet, even as Angela was being carefully escorted away from the active, sprawling crime scene, prepared for transport, a pivotal and unforeseen piece of information emerged from the still-present bystanders, fundamentally altering the entire trajectory of the unfolding investigation. But as Angela is removed from the scene, one of the witnesses surprises them with another detail. They were told from witnesses that there was a possible second suspect. This unexpected revelation sent immediate ripples through the investigative team. The simplistic, clear-cut narrative of a lone attacker and a singular victim, heroically defending herself, was instantly, profoundly complicated. The witness provided a descriptive profile of this new, unknown individual. She described him as a 30 or 40-year-old Caucasian male. The presence of another, unapprehended individual, still potentially lurking somewhere within the rugged, remote terrain, immediately elevated the threat assessment and significantly broadened the geographical and operational scope of the police response. He was still out there, a chilling thought, for the safety of both officers and the public. Guided by the vigilant hikers who had initially discovered Angela, and whose observations continued to prove invaluable, police swiftly redirected their search efforts to a specific, elevated area near the established crime scene. Some of the hikers who found Angela direct police to an area near the crime scene. The witnesses were saying that they noticed up above them on this pretty steep incline. They noticed that there was a man that kept peering up over the rocks and looking down. The imagery evoked was deeply unsettling. A clandestine, almost furtive observer, perhaps intimately involved, perhaps merely a terrified, accidental witness. His elevated vantage point added a palpable layer of profound suspicion and surveillance to the already tense atmosphere. They were directed to the boulders above the scene, and that's where officers spotted the second possible suspect. The tension in the air, already thick with the gravity of the homicide, palpably intensified, the stakes undeniably soaring. The subsequent encounter with this newly identified male was executed with swift, decisive professional authority, minimizing risk. One of the officers withdrew her handgun, pointed it up at the rocks, told him to come down. He complied, came down. They handcuffed him, and then dragged him out of the scene as well. The raw, almost visceral term "dragged him out" conveyed the urgency and the necessity of securing an unknown individual in a potentially hostile environment. The man identified himself as John Epp, and he was immediately taken into custody for further questioning, a critical and immediate step in determining his role, if any, in the horrific events that had just transpired. The investigative apparatus now had two living individuals intricately connected to a brutal homicide, with strikingly disparate accounts and a rapidly expanding labyrinth of unsettling implications. At this crucial juncture, the investigative team found itself navigating a particularly delicate and profoundly precarious evidentiary landscape. We did not have Joel's side of the story. The deceased victim, brutally silenced, could offer no rebuttal, no perspective, no defense against the grave allegations now being leveled against him. At this point, we could only accept what Angela told us. This inherent, painful imbalance in accessible information necessitated the most scrupulous, unbiased, and meticulous detective work possible. Yet, the accumulated oddities, the subtle but persistent inconsistency, and the peculiar anomalies of the crime scene had already begun to whisper persistent doubts to the highly experienced eyes and honed instincts of the seasoned investigators. But I was treating her as a potential homicide suspect. This frank, professionally honest admission from a detective encapsulated the immediate and profoundly difficult shift in perspective. From a seemingly clear-cut victim profile, Angela Sanford was now, by professional necessity, being viewed through the lens of potential culpability. Her initially convincing, though distraught, claims now demanded rigorous, independent verification against every piece of objective evidence. The initial, deceptively simple picture of self-defense was rapidly giving way to a far more intricate, deeply troubling narrative that would challenge every preconceived assumption and demand an unwavering commitment to the painstaking pursuit of unvarnished truth. The stage was now meticulously set for the forthcoming interrogation of the newly introduced John Epler, whose story, or lack thereof, held the potential to either confirm the nascent theories or to confound them entirely, further entangling the already complex web of this desert mystery. The intricate narrative surrounding Joel Lavar's brutal death now necessitated a thorough and meticulous interrogation of John Epp. the second individual found perched in such unsettling proximity to the crime scene. Before the interview with Mr. Epler commenced, the detectives, acting with the methodical precision of seasoned professionals, undertook a critical re-examination of the physical evidence at the crime scene. It was during this painstaking review that a profoundly jarring peculiarity, a discordant note in the grim symphony of collected facts, almost immediately registered with their trained eyes, adding significant weight to the already burgeoning doubts surrounding Angela Sanford's initial account. The weapon I used to kill Mr. Lavar was a so-called ceremonial dagger. This was not merely a knife. Its very description immediately signaled something far more specialized, far more symbolic, hinting at a purpose distinctly beyond mere utilitarian function or spontaneous defense. I found it to be rather fantastical. It looked like it had some Egyptian markings, more of a fantasy thing, more of the type of thing you would display. This detailed, professional assessment by a seasoned investigator painted a vivid picture of an implement that was profoundly out of place in the rugged, pragmatic environment of the New Mexico. It suggested artistry, deep symbolism, an elaborate crafted piece intended for ritualistic display or a fantastical narrative, rather than a raw, pragmatic tool to be wielded in a sudden, desperate, violent encounter. For hiking, it was a little strange. This carefully measured understatement, coming from a detective, conveyed a deep-seated professional unease regarding the presence of such a unique and particular item at a remote, arduous trailhead. While, theoretically, if she's trying to defend herself, she'd use any weapon that she'd find. The inherent nature and deliberate carrying of this specific weapon fundamentally introduced a jarring element of premeditation that contradicted the spontaneity of her self-defense narrative. The logical, analytical mind, the very essence of detective work, immediately challenged the implied randomness. I'm asking her, why are you bringing a dagger that you describe as a ceremonial dagger with you? It just didn't add up. The ornate, symbolic character of the weapon itself seemed to mock the very idea of an impulsive, defensive action, instead strongly hinting at intent, a deliberate, preconceived choice of armament for a planned and sinister event, rather than an improvised tool seized in a desperate last-ditch struggle for survival. The ornate, peculiar dagger, as noteworthy as it was not the sole anomaly unearthed by the detective's meticulous scrutiny of the crime scene. Another seemingly minor detail, initially relayed by the observant witnesses, acquired significantly amplified meaning and profound relevance under the cold, logical, and increasingly skeptical gaze of the investigators. One of the witnesses actually took Angela back so that she could retrieve her clothes. The act of requesting and retrieving one's garments after enduring a profoundly traumatic event might, in and of itself, be deemed understandable and a natural human response. However, it was this specific, meticulous manner in which these discarded clothes were ultimately discovered that introduced another profound and unsettling dissonance: Angela's claims of a violent struggle and frantic escape. They said if they went to the scene, Angela's clothes were neatly folded, which is kind of unusual. The very notion of an individual, moments after allegedly enduring a brutal sexual assault and committing a desperate, life-or-death act of pausing amidst the adrenaline-fueled chaos to meticulously fold and arrange her clothing defied every logical and psychological expectation for such an extreme situation. The fact that her clothes were nicely folded, instead of just thrown off like you would think would have happened in something like a raid, that didn't make sense. The unsettling image conveyed by such an observation was one of remarkable calmness, profound composure, even deliberate staging, qualities utterly at odds with the frantic, terrifying struggle and desperate flight that Angela so vividly described. The precise, almost ritualistic, organization of her garments hinted strongly at a calculated, premeditated, and carefully stage-managed scenario, raising a palpable specter of profound artifice and conscious manipulation. With Angela Sanford still undergoing the necessary and exhaustive examination by the sexual assault nurse, examiners are critical, two-pronged process balancing victim care with the crucial forensic collection of vital evidential data. The detectives systematically shifted their focused attention to the controlled environment of the police station for the interrogation of their second living suspect, John Epler. While Angela is sent to be inspected by the sexual assault nurse, detectives head to the police station to question their surviving suspect. The explicit purpose of this interview was clear and precisely defined by a professional need to systematically eliminate possibilities and gather comprehensive, unbiased, factual information. Going into the interview with Mr. Epler, the detective's mindset was one of cautious openness, carefully poised to discern potential complicity, direct involvement, or merely an unfortunate, accidental circumstance. Epler's opening statements were direct, remarkably unambiguous, offering a clear-cut denial of any profound involvement in the heinous crime. Mr. Epler stated that he did not know Joe, he did not know Angela, and that he didn't witness any of what was going on. His claims, if subsequently verifiable and consistent, would effectively cast him in the role of an entirely innocent bystander, however close his physical proximity to the profound tragedy. Epler himself vividly recounted his intense internal mental state when he found himself abruptly confronted by armed police officers in the rugged, isolated wilderness. Right away I'm thinking, okay, these are smart people. They're going to know I didn't. They're going to figure this out right away. This immediate, almost panicked internal monologue revealed a fleeting, understandable fear of false accusation, quickly supplanted by a robust, rational conviction of his own demonstrable innocence. They're going to know I'm innocent. You know, they're going to figure out I'm innocent. He provided a remarkably coherent, if somewhat individualistic and explanation for his solitary presence in such a remote and challenging Traxxas area. I had a hard day at work, and I decided to relieve some stress and go up to the mountains. His core motivation was both simple and profoundly relatable to the human condition, and I was just trying to get rid of some energy and wear myself out and be tired so I could sleep. This narrative painted a clear picture of a man seeking therapeutic solitude and physical catharsis through rigorous outdoor activity. His specific method of engaging with the mountainous landscape further elucidated and explained his unexpected presence on the pretty steep incline, effectively setting him apart from the average, casual trail walker. So I wasn't there to walk on the trails. I was there to go up a really difficult ravine. This highly specific, arduous pursuit logically accounted for his challenging and unconventional trajectory. It was during this strenuous traverse that he first observed Angela Sanford, an observation that stirred an instinctual, almost protective, concern within him. And so I'm cutting across the mesa, and I noticed there's a girl out there off the beaten trails. At the time, the very first thing that came to my mind was a vulnerable female shouldn't be in an isolated area. As he continued his ascent, her manifest distress became unequivocally clear and deeply concerning. The closer I got, too, more hysterical. You could tell she was panicking about something. Epler, perhaps exercising a wise and cautious discretion, deliberately chose not to directly intervene or approach her too closely, wisely wary of exacerbating her evident distress or inadvertently introducing own intimidating presence into an already profoundly volatile situation. Epler says he didn't want to scare the woman, so he kept hiking. I was probably up there a couple of hours at least. His consistent testimony depicted a responsible individual who had inadvertently stumbled upon a fraught situation, consciously choosing a path of respectful non-engagement out of a genuine sense of caution and concern. His eventual, downward return journey led him directly into the bewildering heart of the burgeoning crime scene. On my way down, I get to this kind of a flat area with this big boulder in front of me. This natural geological obstacle provided his elevated, if precarious, vantage point from which he observed the unfolding police activity. And I look over the boulder and I see a bunch of police officers walk in the area. His immediate, gut-level internal reaction was a highly predictable surge of alarm and apprehension, a common human response to any unexpected police presence, even for the demonstrably innocent. And the very first thing that goes to my mind is, you're going to go to jail. But this transient moment of panic quickly yielded to a more rational, self-aware assessment, firmly anchoring him back to his own fundamental lack of criminal culpability in the dire situation. So then my mind says, well, you didn't do anything. What would you go to jail for? The direct, authoritative command from the police officer cemented his unwilling and unanticipated participation at the grim scene. So I pick my head up over the edge and I look down and there's a police officer down there and he looks at me and he says, and he yells at me, "Hey, get down here." And I said, "What's going on? What is going on?" And he said, "We're going to find out." In his subsequent formal interview, when pressed by detectives on why his initial instinctive thought was of potential incarceration, Epler offered a disarmingly honest and remarkably minor confession, one that, while constituting a legal transgression, possessed absolutely no bearing whatsoever on the far graver crime of murder. When they asked him why he thought he was going to jail, He gives them an innocent explanation. I said, "Hey, I have a confession to make. I got a marijuana pipe in my pocket." This small, seemingly innocuous admission, revealing a relatively minor, paradoxically lent significant credibility to his much larger claims of profound innocence regarding the homicide. It painted a picture of a man willing to be truthful, even about his own minor shortcomings, particularly when confronted with a far more serious and devastating accusation. His cooperation extended further, encompassing a proactive offer to provide irrefutable forensic evidence of his known involvement in the murder. So at that point, they bring in these people and they say, "We're going to take a DNA sample." And I said, "Yes, please do. I want you to take a DNA sample. This will prove my innocence." This unreserved and unequivocal willingness to voluntarily submit to comprehensive forensic testing, meticulously combined with a remarkably consistent, coherent, and plausible account of his movements, observations, and motivations, resonated profoundly and positively with the scrutinizing detectives. At this point, we had no evidence to suggest that John Epler was involved in the alleged rape or raping of Angela Sanford. The complete absence of any corroborating physical evidence, coupled with his transparent and forthright demeanor, unequivocally led to a clear, professional conclusion regarding his status. The impression I got is that he's more of a reluctant witness to this. He was, by all accounts, a person who found himself in the unfortunate and wrong place at the precisely wrong time. An accidental observer caught in the terrifying periphery of a horrific and unfolding crime. Therefore, so he was released without charges. John Epler's temporary and peripheral role as a suspect quickly dissolved into that of a mere, if perturbed, bystander, allowing the intensive investigation to now focus its laser-like scrutiny, almost entirely, on Angela Sanford, whose rapidly unraveling story, now thoroughly riddled with deepening discrepancies and increasingly troubling inconsistencies, was poised to collapse under the unwavering and methodical gaze of the law. The path ahead promised to delve into the intricate and often dark labyrinth of psychological deception, ultimately exposing a chill, premeditated malevolence meticulously concealed beneath a fragile veneer of victim. The accumulated weight of the inconsistencies in Angela Sanford's initial harrowing account, coupled with the profound peculiarities of the crime scene, compelled the investigators to approach her claims with a deeply ingrained sense of professional skepticism and heightened caution. This approach was not born of a desire to immediately disbelieve a potential victim, but rather from the rigorous standard of scrutiny unequivocally demanded by the gravity of a homicide investigation. Now detectives need to speak with Angela about the misidentified alleged attacker. The persona of a seasoned criminal psychology analyst and detective novelist would, at this juncture, highlight the inherent, delicate balance inherent in such inquiries. Somebody who's gone through something that traumatic, we don't want to not believe them. The imperative for empathy and compassion toward potential victims is a deeply ingrained and fundamental tenet of modern law enforcement. But I got a call from the detectives. They told me that they had concerns about her story. This communication marked a formal, internal shift, signifying the crystallization of nagging doubts into concrete, professionally acknowledged concerns, demanding a more intensified, forensic approach. The investigative process is meticulously designed to not only collect evidence but also to sensitively accommodate the complex, often disorienting psychological impacts of profound trauma on a victim's memory and narrative coherence. It's really common for survivors of rape, sexual assault, to not remember everything at first, to misremember things, report things several days or weeks later as they were processing the trauma that occurred. This crucial understanding of trauma-informed interviewing practices guided their handling of Angela's account, recognizing that her initial confusion or gaps in memory might genuinely be symptoms of profound distress, rather than deliberate obfuscation. To address the very specific and grave claims of sexual violence, a critical and indispensable medical procedure had been diligently undertaken. We have sexual assault nurse examiners that are trained in the forensic collection of evidence for women who are the victims of sexual violence, and Miss Stanford was taken to be examined. This comprehensive, specialized medical legal examination served as the objective arbiter, capable of providing scientific corroboration or, conversely, a definitive refutation of Angela's traumatic narrative. After she was examined, the case agent had an opportunity then to sit down with her. This represented the next crucial phase, a more structured and controlled interview, conducted after the immediate shock and the completion of medical assessment. specifically designed to elicit a more complete, coherent, and factually grounded version of the unfolding events. The follow-up interview with Angela, held in the controlled yet inherently sterile confines of the police station, occurred at a late hour, imbuing the atmosphere with a sense of urgency, exhaustion, and somber reflection. My initial interview with Angela, the first time I actually talked to her, was at the police station. I believe it was a little after midnight. Despite the intervening hours since her discovery and the professional care she had ostensibly received, Angela continued to present a facade of acute and ongoing emotional distress. Angela was displaying signs of being distraught, still distraught. This consistent display of profound emotional turmoil initially served to reinforce the prevailing public image of her as an unequivocal victim, battered and traumatized by a horrific ordeal. However, Angela's subsequent statements, delivered within the structured environment of the interview room, took a dramatic and profoundly unsettling turn, immediately complicating the simple random attack narrative she had initially presented. She starts by saying this was not a random attack. She knew this was a significant and shocking pivot, introducing a intentional connection between the alleged victim and the deceased. A revelation that shattered the illusion of a spontaneous act of opportunistic violence by a stranger. Her explicit claim regarding the purpose of their meeting added a bizarre, almost fantastical layer to the grim and immediate reality of the situation. She said that she had contact with him, inviting him to go celebrate the Wiccan holiday up in the foothills. The specific and unexpected reference to a Wiccan holiday immediately raised multiple red flags and deep suspicions among the pragmatic, fact-driven detectives, strongly hinting at an agenda far removed from a typical, innocent social encounter or a casual hike. Joel agreed to go up with her. This crucial detail, indicating Joel's willing participation in the rendezvous, further chipped away at the initial, simplistic image of him as an unprovoked aggressor, ambushing an unsuspecting woman. Miss Sanford then continued to provide a specific, if ultimately fatally flawed, cultural and temporal context for their planned rendezvous. Miss Sanford said that she had been in the area celebrating the Wiccan holiday in Beltane. However, this seemingly concrete detail, intended as a key element of her cover story, immediately and irrevocably backfired, exposing a fundamental flaw in her fabrication. And immediately, I knew that wasn't true. The detective's swift and astute recognition of this glaring, chronological inaccuracy, the fact that Beltane is traditionally celebrated in May, not in March when the incident occurred, served as a devastating blow to the credibility of Angela's entire, meticulously constructed narrative. The persona of the seasoned detective novelists might here observe the ironic fate of criminals who, in their overzealous attempt to create an elaborate and watertight alibi, unwittingly weave in verifiable details that prove to be demonstrably false, thereby becoming the very threads that unravel their carefully spun web of deception. This glaring chronological misstep solidified the burgeoning conviction that Angela's entire Wiccan ceremony was nothing more than a convenient, poorly researched, and ultimately transparent fabrication designed to mask a far more sinister and premeditated intent. Angela Sanford, now trapped in the increasingly elaborate narrative she had woven, had just, under the cold lights of interrogation, revealed to investigators that she had been the orchestrator of the meeting with Joel LeVar in the New Mexico mountains, under the highly suspicious pretext of celebrating a Wiccan ceremony, a claim instantly recognized as deeply flawed and false. The detectives, with a keen and professional awareness of Angela's shifting and inconsistent narratives, instructed her to recount their interaction from the very beginning, laying bare the timeline of her contact with Joel. Detectives have her start from the beginning. Angela tells us that she had met Joel at the casino a couple of days before. The setting of their initial acquaintance, a casino, introduced a milieu of casual encounters, a context of fleeting connections that, in Angela's manipulative hands, had apparently transformed into something far more insidious and purposeful. She was unemployed. She was looking for a possible job. This provided a plausible, almost innocuous initial motivation for their interaction, making Joel's naturally friendly engagement, consistent with his known character, tragically understandable and vulnerable. Joel said he could possibly offer him if she had a resume. This offer of assistance was profoundly in keeping with the universally recognized character of Joel. LeVar, man universally lauded for his eager willingness to help those in need, his open-hearted generosity, and his innate compassion. The interaction, as described by Angela, apparently progressed beyond the initial meeting, moving swiftly into the realm of digital communication. They ended up exchanging phone numbers. Then they left the casino, A couple days later, they were texting each other back and forth. These technological breadcrumbs, seemingly innocuous digital footprints, would later prove to be an invaluable and undeniable source of objective truth, forming a silent, powerful counter-narrative to Angela's unfolding fabrication. Joel's son's earlier, heartfelt description of his father echoed powerfully in the investigators' minds, providing crucial context to this seemingly easy accessibility. My dad was always meeting new people, always trying to help people out, be that open ear. It painted a picture of a trusting, amiable, and genuinely helpful individual, tragically vulnerable to those with ulterior and malevolent intentions. They struck up a relationship, and through phone calls and text messages, she invited him to participate in this Wiccan holiday. The term relationship here likely implied something far more superficial and transient, and the subsequent invitation, in retrospect, appeared undeniably more predatory than Angela initially implied. Angela, still meticulously attempting to cloak her profoundly sinister intentions in the guise of spiritual devotion, elaborated on her self-proclaimed affiliation. Angela explains that she's a follower of Wicca, a pagan religion whose practitioners are often referred to as witches, while ostensibly offering a window into her stated belief system. This declaration immediately struck the seasoned investigators as highly unusual and remarkably out of context within the parameters of their criminal inquiries. I have never had an incident involving anyone who called themselves a Wiccan witch. This explicit admission of novelty underscored distinctly bizarre and unprecedented nature of her chosen defense and justification. Her narrative continued, detailing the fateful and tragic day of March 22nd. On the 22nd of March, Angela states that Joel called her to check in. This again was a subtle, yet deliberate, attempt to cast Joel as the proactive initiator, the more eager party in their engagement. However, Angela's very next statement, intended to explain her actions, almost immediately and profoundly exposed her true orchestrating role in the day's grim events. Angela had stated that she was going up to do a Wiccan ceremony up at the foothills, and asked him if he wanted to come along. This was the thinly veiled bait, the carefully constructed lure specifically designed for her intended victim. According to Angela, the ceremony was meant to celebrate a Gaelic holiday known as belting. The repetitive insistence on Beltane, despite its chronological inaccuracy, solidified the increasingly clear picture of a planned, intentional fabrication, a deliberate deception. Her alleged motivation for inviting Joel was also offered as a deceptive rationale, a seemingly plausible spiritual cover. She claims that she felt it was going to be a time where maybe she could convert him to her faith. The very notion of successfully converting a devout, practicing Catholic, deeply committed to his spiritual beliefs, to the tenets of Wicca served as a convenient, albeit far-fetched and poorly conceived, spiritual veneer designed to mask a far more earthly and profoundly sinister intention. The communication between the two of them only started a few days prior, but they had set up to meet in this particular area. The startling rapidity of this developing connection, culminating in a secretive and isolated rendezvous, significantly fueled investigators' burgeoning suspicions of explicit premeditation and malevolent design. Further intricate details regarding the day of the crime continued to be revealed during Angela's extended interview. She said her boyfriend dropped her off at the trailhead. This specific detail, while seemingly incidental, introduced a crucial corroborating witness to her initial movements and presence at the trail, but a witness whose subsequent testimony would further cast significant doubt on her stated true intentions for the day. Joel arrived shortly thereafter and is walking behind her. This deliberate, planned, and sequential arrival sequence of the two individuals further reinforced the meticulously choreographed nature of their predetermined meeting, strengthening the growing impression of careful design. The two of them had had drinks. The disclosed consumption of alcohol by both parties introduced a subtle yet potentially significant variable into their interactions, possibly suggesting lowered inhibitions or a degree of clouded judgment, a factor that would certainly necessitate careful consideration in the larger mosaic of the investigation, though it would by no means excuse the subsequent horrific events. Angela's story then moved seamlessly into the critical sequence of events that allegedly transpired. Once they ventured deeper into the rugged, isolated wilderness, Angela says the hike started out innocently enough, but once they got deeper into the wilderness, things took a turn. This conventional narrative structure, frequently employed in recounting a surprise assault, was skillfully utilized by Angela to carefully guide the listener towards accepting her prescripted role as an innocent victim. She stated that she veered off to the site where she was going to hold the ceremony. This intentional and deliberate diversion from the publicly accessible